Charlie comes to the central hospital to see an ophthalmologist. The doctor clarifies his details and asks about his symptoms. Charlie complains of blurred vision. He mentions that he sees a red band with numbers over objects. The doctor wonders what number is on the bar. Charlie replies, the number 18, and suddenly asks if it has to do with his age. The doctor is slightly puzzled and wonders if Charlie is in the wrong department. Charlie, ignoring the doctor's question, ponders whether those numbers are a harbinger of death. Upon realizing, he apologizes, admitting that he had been thinking. The doctor, in a serious tone, reminds him of the importance of the examination and suggests that his eyes be checked. During the examination, the doctor finds no abnormalities and declares that Charlie's eyesight is fine. Suddenly, Charlie is again covered by a red veil. He walks down the hallway and sees streaks over people's heads indicating their vitality. Charlie is pleased that he can now see clearly and walks home confidently. As he leaves the hospital, he notices an ad for Night Watch. The ad says that after the cataclysm of 1999, a safe place has been created while others retreat. Charlie doesn't give it much thought and continues on his way, but suddenly his shoelaces come untied. Bending over to tie them, he realizes that the world around him has changed. Looking up, Charlie sees his city, but distorted and engulfed in dark shadows. Suddenly, a woman rushes past Charlie as if not noticing him. She and several fighters have engaged in battle with the otherworldly creatures that inhabit this world. Charlie watches the battle, realizing that the humans are having a hard time. A creature resembling the sun appears in front of him, with incredible life force. But suddenly, large glowing blobs of light begin to fall from the sky. One of the drops touches Charlie's forehead, illuminating him with a light. Moments later, he regains consciousness at a crosswalk in his city. Charlie recalls that in the cataclysm of 1999, the only hope for mankind was the Night Watch army. But Charlie is plagued by doubts. Is his city really safe? Or is it an elaborate lie? A merchant approaches him and offers him a cure, assuring him that its quality is as good as the official one. Charlie is surprised that someone is selling drugs when the town is full of monsters. After a short negotiation, he buys a bottle of divine oil and gets on the bus. Looking out the window, Charlie wonders if he has taken the whole thing too seriously. The announcer on the bus announces the arrival on South Street and asks the passengers to prepare to get off. Suddenly, the shadows thicken again, and Charlie returns to the dark world he left only a few minutes ago. He shakes his head and looks around, coming back to reality again. Charlie is amazed at how quickly these strange visions return. Deciding to take a thorough look around when he arrives home, he heads to his apartment. At home, Charlie takes a shower, wipes himself down, and turns to the mirror. Charlie notices a familiar pattern on his chest. He remembers looking for a lost comic book in the library recently. In doing so, he clumsily dropped a book with a similar pattern on it. The memories revitalize the pattern, which begins to pulse. Charlie collapses, clutching his chest from the growing pain. He takes a shower and cools the pattern with hot water, calming down. In the mirror, he sees that his vitality is at its peak. His joy is interrupted by strange sounds from a wriggling shadow. The shadow suddenly disappears, causing Charlie to search for it in a panic. When the shadow returns, Charlie calms down, having gotten used to the unusual phenomena. An exhausted Charlie leaves the bathtub, realizing how tired he is. In the hallway, he is greeted by a mysterious black silhouette, exactly like his reflection. With astonishment, he remarks, "Apparently an era of miracles has begun in my life." Pain grips Charlie's chest and he frantically grasps at it, trying to calm himself. He is relieved that his shadow remains, though confused by its new living state. Once dressed, Charlie tests the shadow by commanding it to raise its arm, and it obeys. After several successful commands, Charlie offers the shadow a dance, and it performs it perfectly. Charlie scratches the back of his head in confusion, pondering the origin of the shadow. His musings are cut short by a bright light erupting from his chest and filling the room. Wisp presents Charlie with an analysis and possibilities for improving his shadow's skills. The light reveals that the shadow lives on because of Charlie, shares his memories and powers, can perform tasks, but is unconscious. Charlie touches the shadow and his hand passes through it. He realizes that the shadow cannot speak due to its lack of consciousness. To see if their memories match, Charlie starts looking for something in his notebooks. He pulls out a sheet with a math assignment. Charlie hands the pen to Shadow and asks her to solve the equations. The Shadow confidently takes the pen, sits down at the table, and begins to work. After a while, the Shadow writes on the sheet, "Equation solved," and nothing more. Charlie angrily rebukes the Shadow, reminding it that it holds all his memories, and adds that he himself would have solved the problem in 2 minutes. He decides to give the Shadow a new task and asks it to draw a horse instead of solving equations. The Shadow immediately gets to work, drawing the horse at an incredible speed. While Shadow is busy drawing, Charlie decides to investigate her other abilities. He discovers the skill Shadow Bite, which allows him to absorb shadows and amplify himself and his shadow. Deciding to test it out, Charlie goes to the corner of the room and tries to touch the shadow. Despite his best efforts, nothing happens. After several failed attempts, Charlie returns to the screen and reads the description of the Shadow Pupil skill, which allows him to see the dark side of the world. He suspects that this skill is connected to the strange visions that haunt him. Charlie orders the shadow to stop drawing and do a couple of push-ups. The shadow gets up from the chair, but instead of complying with the command, it begins to slowly blend into the floor. Despite Charlie's shouts, the shadow goes deeper and deeper until it disappears completely. Shocked, Charlie frantically looks around, trying to figure out where the shadow has gone. He continues to demand its return, desperately swiveling his head. Soon, a shadowy vortex begins to form in the air behind him. Charlie's shadow suddenly jumps out of it as if from a portal, glowing with smugness. But Charlie is unimpressed and asks why she escaped. Shadow takes a notepad and pen, writing that she was on the dark side. When Charlie wonders what she was doing there, the shadow replies that she was doing push-ups. Charlie suggests that shadow training is more effective on the dark side, and suggests that she continue. The shadow nods silently and dissolves back into the floor, leaving Charlie alone. Charlie puts away his notebooks, picks up his stylus, and gets to work. But soon fatigue overtakes him, and he falls asleep. He is awakened by a shout at the door, and Charlie goes to reveal his guest. On the doorstep is his childhood friend Carol. She walks in, and Charlie wonders why she's here so early. Carol, confused, asks what he was doing yesterday, noting that his messages were incomprehensible. Suddenly, the deafening sound of the door closing startles Carol, and she flinches violently. Carol yells at Charlie in annoyance that he could have just said he didn't want to talk instead of slamming the door so loudly. If Carol was startled, Charlie was startled by the sudden force with which he did it. She looks him over suspiciously and asks him with a smile if he's drugged. However, she quickly concludes that Charlie would rather die than go to the gym. As she gets closer, she wonders what he's done to himself. Charlie replies that he only worked out a little, guessing that it was the result of shadow exercises. Not satisfied with his words, Carol lifts up his t-shirt and examines his abs. Carol calls Charlie a liar, stating that it's impossible to pump abs that fast. She mentions that she's seen her father doing odd jobs and says it's not too late to stop. Charlie, irritably waving it off, claims he doesn't do anything like that. Suddenly, Carol grabs his arm and puts it behind his back, ignoring his indignation. She puts a bracelet on him, explaining that it's a pollution index device. Carol clarifies that murder, strange objects, and insults count as contamination. Charlie ponders that his abilities are related to the book stuck in his chest and wonders if she can help him. Suddenly, dark energy begins to pulse in his chest, and Charlie is frightened that the device might detect this. Charlie notices that Carol has pulled out a gun and begins to worry that she might kill him. However, the device detects no contamination, and Carol calmly continues to twirl the gun in her hands. She explains that her father taught her to be careful about everything. Charlie decides to change the subject and suggests that Carol look at his recent drawings. She enthusiastically agrees, asking to see them as soon as possible. After a while, Charlie lies down on the bed and admits that the situation was on the verge of being critical. Charlie notices his shadow quickly gaining strength and new skills. He realizes that the shadow has been training hard all night. Charlie summons the shadow to thank it for its hard work that has made him stronger. He suggests making the workouts harder to further progress, and the shadow silently agrees. The shadow proceeds to perform incredibly difficult exercises. Charlie decides not to stop and continues to challenge her further. Carol walks to the door of the room and hears Charlie enthusiastically motivating his shadow. Assuming that Charlie is talking to himself while practicing, Carol mentally decides that she was worried about him for nothing. The next day, Charlie walks down the street, noticing that he is getting stronger without any pain. Later, Charlie gave the shadow even more tasks, and the results are immediate. That day, his Uncle Lee, who lost an arm in a combat mission, comes to visit him. Charlie hopes that with hard training he can become as strong as his uncles. After days of procrastination, Charlie finally decides to work out and does 10 push-ups. After the workout, Charlie checks his shadow stats and notices that his progress has slowed dramatically. He realizes that getting the right number of points for evolution will be difficult. Charlie decides that he may have to immerse himself in the dark world to improve. A few seconds later, he finds himself in his room, shrouded in a dark aura. Outside, Charlie decides to walk through the dark world to scout out the surroundings. He notices that the dark side can only be accessed by leaving the real world. Walking through the dark space, Charlie analyzes the environment and notices its similarities to the real world. Losing his guard, he doesn't notice the dark whispers around him thickening into something sinister. Suddenly, he feels someone behind him and turns around, thinking it's his shadow. Turning around, Charlie is confronted by a huge mouth studded with razor-sharp teeth. The shadow monster raises its scythe, preparing to strike. Charlie reacts instantly, ducking and jumping aside. As he continues to dodge, he activates the shadow's pupil and opens a portal to the real world. At the last moment before impact, Charlie dives into the portal and disappears. Once in the real world, he falls to the floor and hits his face. Charlie admits he was pretty scared and doesn't realize what it was. He is glad that training with the shadow has made him agile, but decides to get revenge on the monster by getting comfortable in a chair. However, Charlie's subsequent attempts to defeat the shadow monster prove unsuccessful. He was injured in one of the fights, narrowly escaping broken bones. During his escape, Charlie received a slash wound to his buttock, but that didn't stop him from successfully retreating. After a while, Carol comes to him and helps him recover by treating his wounds. Charlie jokes that scars adorn a man, to which Carol sarcastically remarks that scars on the buttocks are hardly jewelry. She adds that if it hurts now, it means the body is about to get stronger. Charlie, distracted, asks about Carol's plans for the rest of the month. Carol is perplexed as to what he means, and asks what last month he is talking about. Charlie reminds Carol that this is about a martial arts exam. He recalls that after the disaster, many industries, including culture and the arts, lost popularity. Charlie adds that now battles that capture people's hearts have taken center stage. To become part of the Night Watch, you have to pass a state exam in martial arts. Carol, after a bit of thought, admits that she doesn't really want to take that exam. With hesitation, she adds that her true desire is to pursue music. Charlie supports her, saying that if that's what she wants to do, there's no problem, but warns that her father might be against it. Carol is sure her father won't accept her wish. Carol adds that anyone can now apply to take the martial arts exam. Charlie asks why she is so hesitant, assuring her that she will definitely take the exam if she wants to. Carol explains that the workload on the Night Watch is constantly increasing, and that's why they take almost everyone. Charlie ponders that he will fail the exam if there are tests with firearms, which scares him a lot. He is also disturbed by the thought that failure could land him in a reform camp. Charlie asks if he can use Carol's detector. Ta wonders why he would want to. Carol explains that the detector is needed to detect others, and Charlie would be better off just running away, calling the night guard, and waiting to be rescued. Carol wonders if his curiosity is related to his plans to take a martial arts exam. Receiving an affirmative answer, Carol quickly runs up to Charlie and excitedly asks how serious his intentions are. Embarrassed, Charlie replies that he also plans to create several comic books on different and special topics. Unexpectedly, he sparks Carol's intense interest in comic books and she begins to demand details. Charlie explains that his original idea was to create a story about a skinny guy named Abin, who was constantly bullied on campus, but despite this, held no grudges and remained kind. Aben gained incredible willpower and completely changed after being injected with a super soldier. But the Night's Watch wasn't going to send him to the front. Instead, he was sent to social events so he could make acquaintances in high society. Charlie ends the story at its most exciting point, mentioning that all of this took place before the powerful forces invaded the city. Later, Carol brings Charlie to her house and asks him to settle down. Carol asks Charlie to wait in her room while she goes in to see her father. Charlie finds a romantic manga about sibling love on Carol's bed and asks if she likes the genre. Carol is embarrassed, quickly snatches the manga out of his hands and, stammering, excuses herself that it's a friend's book that she hasn't read herself. Carol sternly tells Charlie to sit still and not to touch her things, then leaves the room. Charlie smiles as he sits back in his chair and thinks about how Carol hasn't changed. She never learned to protect her feelings. His gaze falls on the guitar, and he remembers how Carol had been fascinated by music since she was a child and was always pestering him to play. Charlie turns on the tape recorder and immerses himself in memories of the times when Carol spent a lot of time with him. Suddenly, Carol comes back and asks him when he fell in love with music, reminding him that he used to hate it. After saying this, Carol tosses Charlie the virtual reality goggles, grinningly stating that everything he needs is right here. Charlie puts on the goggles and instantly finds himself in a bottomless virtual space. Floating in the air, he is surprised to realize that he is in a virtual version of Shenzhou. According to his memories, this place was the source of the cataclysmic event from which the first others emerged. Charlie notices that some of the monsters look suspiciously familiar, like the ones he saw in the hospital. Charlie is convinced that there is a space between our world and Shenzhou called the Dark World. According to his knowledge, the shadow layer is renewed every 3 months, displaying a new picture of the world. This is when others infiltrate our world, and the weakened defenses make the streets dangerous for those whose rank is below the 4th rank. The shadow layer is also full of various types of contaminants, prolonged contact with which increases the risk of becoming foreign. Absorbed in thought, Charlie doesn't notice a huge other appearing behind his back. Fortunately, a powerful beam of light suddenly strikes the monster, destroying it in the blink of an eye. Charlie notices that his savior is a humanoid creature and immediately recognizes him as the Special One. He marvels at their incredible appearance, dreaming that one day they too could become one. Upon reflection, Charlie realizes that the Special One is another who controls his power using the human body, but pays for it with his life. The protagonist remembers that special people are constantly fighting pollution and alienation, and after their death, there is a high probability of becoming different. Therefore, Charlie believes that when the special people anticipate death, they tend to exhaust themselves completely, so that they don't turn into a powerful other. Charlie takes off his glasses, pleased with what he has seen. Carol inquires about his impressions, and he replies that such a lot of information needs to be comprehended. Suddenly, Charlie asks Carol to stretch his neck, to which he receives only an irritated refusal. Then he offers her 3 original paintings to choose from to soften her up. Reluctantly, but still, Carol agrees and begins to stretch the neck of a happy Charlie. She then asks what causes the pain, and Charlie explains that it's the effects of exercise. Carol asks with interest if he is still pumping his abs, and after being asked to check, she lifts up his t-shirt, touching his trained muscles. However, they are unexpectedly caught by Carol's father, Lou, who approaches unnoticed. Later, the heroes have a silent dinner in the kitchen, hesitant to start a conversation. Charlie notices that Uncle Lou is throwing glances at him, full of desire for a showdown. Carol decides to be the first to break the tense silence, explaining to her father that he has misunderstood. Lou asks suspiciously what exactly he misunderstood, adding that his eyes hardly deceived him. Carol, confused, turns to Charlie for help, demanding something intelligible from him. With a serious face, Charlie declares that he will drink 3 drinks as punishment. Convinced that Charlie deserves to be punished, Uncle Lou lunges at him, asking Carol where his knife is. Charlie recalls how he and Carol were childhood friends, even though their personalities were quite different. He was the bully, and she was the studious daughter. Charlie thinks that perhaps Carol stayed close to him because he once protected her from other bullies. According to him, she accompanied him on all his adventures, getting into all sorts of stories. However, Lou's uncle had always forbidden Carol to get too close to Charlie for fear of his influence. Now Lou looks gloomily at Charlie, who takes out a cigarette and prepares to light it. Carol quickly runs up to her father and grudgingly takes the cigarette from Charlie's hands. Uncle Lou decides to break the tense silence and asks the characters what they were doing before he returned. Charlie quickly admits that they were looking for information about other and special people. Convinced that this is true, Lou becomes softer, saying that he understands now. He asks Charlie if he knows why the government doesn't share this information with the students ahead of time. Charlie thinks for a while and honestly admits that he doesn't understand the reasons. Lou explains that people's hearts are different. Evil can override kindness, and desperation can attract the creatures from Shenzhou. Therefore, not everyone needs to know certain things. He adds that not everyone has the willpower, and if a gap forms in the heart, someone else can enter it. Therefore, Uncle Lou says, tests are conducted so that only those who are physically fit can interact with the world of others. However, he observed that even with the current level of medicine, this world remains extremely dangerous and out of control. Charlie admits that he understood everything Uncle Lou explained, but he can't skip his martial arts exam this year. Charlie and Lou's conversation is interrupted by a phone call announcing an urgent mission involving the Shadow Layer. Lou's uncle immediately announces that he is leaving for the scene and tells Charlie that he will take him on night duty if he does well on his exams. Charlie, looking seriously at his uncle, promises that everything will be fine and he and Carol won't do anything forbidden. Carol gets angry at Charlie's jokes, puffs up her cheeks, and yells that they never thought of such a thing. After a while, Charlie heads to the store, summarizing his visit with Carol and admitting that he didn't learn much new. As he wanders around the store, he mentally complains that the information he needs will probably remain secret. Charlie continues to wonder when suddenly his phone rings. Carol calls Charlie and asks to buy eggs and milk, then starts to ask for something else, but quickly changes her mind and hangs up without finishing. Charlie realizes that she tried to ask for pads but was embarrassed. He decides to buy them anyway. Back home, he notices that graduation is a month away and is frustrated that the effects of his workouts are starting to wear off. Charlie decides to add real shadows to his training. As he watches the moon, he senses that something terrible is about to happen. Charlie decides that he hasn't been imagining things too much and decides to stretch himself a bit. After making sure no one is around, he opens a portal to the world of shadows. Inside, he immediately hears strange sounds and sees a streak of life approaching in the distance. A badly injured man appears in front of him, moving slowly towards him. Charlie recognizes the exhausted man as his housemate and asks what he is doing here. The neighbor remains silent and falls to the floor, completely exhausted. However, Charlie notices a strange and painfully familiar creature behind him. Looking closer, he recognizes the shadow monster he fought a few days ago. Charlie clenches his fists and decides to end it once and for all. A few dozen minutes ago, the soldier guarding the post admitted to himself that he was terribly tired. His complaints are interrupted by a cry for help coming from a nearby gate. Running to the cry, the soldier finds 2 small children being sucked in by a shadowy, funnel-shaped creature. The soldier stands in a stupor, unable to believe that someone is dragging people so openly into the dark world. The children continue to be dragged deeper and deeper, and they scream for help in despair. The soldier comes to his senses, jumps to the children and yells that he will save them. He manages to grab the children's hands, but the portal pulls him in with them. Once in the dark version of the alley, the children begin to cry in fear, bathed by their mother. The soldier says in despair that he has no weapons and his fighting skills are weak. His monologue is interrupted by a shadow strike flying at them at great speed. Collecting himself, the soldier successfully deflects the attack. He notices that the gap has disappeared and they will not be able to get back in. The soldier mentally notes that there could be other threats everywhere, ready to attack at any moment. However, for the soldier, the most frightening thing is the helpless children. He realizes that he can only send a distress signal and wait for help. The soldier gives the children his device, asking them not to cry, and explaining that it will help with the local pollution. The children, wiping away their tears, ask if he can bring them home, calling each other brothers. The soldier promises to get them out of here, but asks them to stay close to him. Suddenly, from around a corner, they are attacked by a shadow monster hiding in ambush. The soldier recalls that he passed his martial arts exam at the age of 18 and entered the university's martial arts department. He worked hard and won first place in the alien combat exam. But that was not enough, because in the other world, hard work was not decisive. The soldier refused to believe in fate, but no matter how hard he tried, he was never able to overcome his limits. In the end, the soldier decides to switch from the martial arts department to the humanities department and become an ordinary civil servant. Returning to the current situation, he analyzes the shadow, concluding that it is a medium-strength creature with a partial human form. The shadow lunges to attack, but the soldier manages to dodge and lands a blow to the side. Taking a few successful blows, he is pleased to feel the familiar feeling again. However, this causes him to let his guard down and the shadow grabs him, pinning him against the wall. The soldier swears his body is slower than his mind and realizes he needs to be more calculating. The shadow continues to press him, landing dozens of blows that he barely has time to dodge. The soldier realizes that he can't run forever and decides to take a risky step. He flies into the air, using the power of shadow to blind the monster. However, it quickly becomes clear that this power begins to harm him, polluting his soul. He realizes that due to his low skill, he will not be able to use the shadow powers for long, but he has no other choice. The shadow monster swiftly jerks and delivers a precise blow to the soldier's chest. The soldier flies back, but quickly gets up, surprised at how quickly the monster has adapted to his fighting style. He notes that any martial arts student at the academy could have handled it, but it is a great challenge for him. Nevertheless, the soldier has no right to retreat and decides to wait for others to help. The shadow monster strikes him again, piercing his shoulder. Wasting no time, the monster knocks the soldier down, intending to finish him off. The violent impact makes the soldier's eyes darken and he wonders if he is dying. He recalls how his family was killed by others when he was 15, and he passed his martial arts exam at 18. The shadow monster notices that the soldier is not moving and prepares a powerful finishing attack. Gathering all his will, the soldier decides that he must give his best before he dies, absorbing the shadow power. He easily dodges the monster's blows, flying into the air. Taking advantage of the brief window of opportunity, the soldier delivers a precise blow to the creature's head, stunning it. While the monster is temporarily immobilized, the soldier unleashes a hail of shadow attacks on it. Each blow takes more and more of the soldier's strength, and he begins to slowly weaken. Before he can finish off the monster, the soldier freezes, clenching his heavy fist in the air. The shadow counterattacks, knocking the soldier off his feet and sending him flying. Falling to the ground, the soldier admits to himself that he can't see anything and laments his lack of skill. A soldier is taking stock of his life when suddenly he hears familiar sounds not far away. It's Charlie loudly asking what's going on here. The soldier tries to figure out who is in front of him by going through his options, but he doesn't recognize Charlie as a member of the Night Watch. Charlie approaches the soldier and tells him to rest and trust him. The soldier remembers that the dark side exit is strictly controlled and a random person would not be able to get in here. However, his thoughts are interrupted by a shadow monster who delivers a swift fist attack, throwing Charlie far away. The soldier realizes in shock that Charlie turns out to be incredibly weak. Not wanting to mess with Charlie, the monster decides to kill the soldier, swinging his arms around to attack. Luckily, Charlie manages to hit the monster hard, interrupting its attack. Looking at the monster with disdain, Charlie challenges him to a fight. The monster attacks Charlie with a series of quick attacks, but Charlie successfully dodges. Seizing the moment, Charlie delivers a powerful blow with a bottle, shattering it and forming a weapon out of the glass. The monster attacks again, but Charlie quickly dodges and chases after it. Charlie pokes the monster in its weak spot with the sharp glass, causing it to cry out in pain. Enraged, the monster begins to attack Charlie furiously, but Charlie easily dodges. Charlie continues to strike with the broken bottle, causing the monster to retreat briefly. Charlie decides not to let the monster go, yelling that he won't lose, and rushes in to attack. Shadow takes advantage of his carelessness and slams his tail into Charlie's unprotected body. Charlie flies into the wall and berates himself for rashly attacking the same spot. He realizes that he can't let the monster attack the children, and notes that if the monster could have escaped, he would have done so already. Charlie notes that the shadow has only 20% health left and decides to finish the job today. The soldier informs him that the monster has a serious injury to its right rib and advises him to attack there. Charlie takes the information to heart and lunges at the monster with a series of blows. He distracts the monster with quick movements, looking for a suitable window to attack. A blow to the weak spot takes 2% of the shadow's health, and it screams loudly. The shadow takes off again, and Charlie suggests that it may be trying to escape. However, the shadow darts toward the children, intending to eat them and regain its strength. The shadow reaches the children and opens its huge maw, revealing a black blob that resembles a tongue. The little boy hugs the girl, looking in horror at the sharp teeth. Charlie decides to thwart the monster, realizing it won't get to him in time. He energizes himself for a decisive throw. A thrown soda can crashes into the monster's head, but the monster pays no attention to it. At the last moment, the soldier gathers his last strength and delivers a powerful kick to the monster's body. The blow reduces its vitals by another 3% and it begins to cough. In a rage, the shadow decides to eat the weakened soldier instead of the children. However, Charlie manages to reach the monster and grabs it by the face, preventing it from biting either himself or the soldier. Charlie yells at the monster, ordering it to die, and sinks his teeth into it with force. Holding on to the monster, Charlie knocks it down and begins throwing punches. Gaining an advantage, Charlie continues to attack, landing multiple blows. Having done enough damage, Charlie again orders the monster to die and delivers a powerful finishing attack. The monster is blown to smithereens, giving the protagonist incredible strength. He can barely stand up and notices that objects around him begin to levitate. Charlie sighs with relief, puts his hand to his forehead, and rejoices in revenge. But the triumph is short-lived. His eyes begin to darken. Charlie sees himself at the assembly point, surrounded by piles of corpses. He recognizes the place and wonders why it has changed so much. Suddenly, dozens of monsters appear out of the shadows and attack him. Charlie is instantly torn apart. He wakes up with difficulty, seeing a soldier who asks if everything is all right. Clearing the dust from his throat, Charlie replies that he is fine. He examines the monster's remains and remembers that memories are cut off after it dies. Charlie puts his finger to its head and activates the shadow pupil to absorb the monster's essence. The soldier asks Charlie if he can hear him. Charlie answers in the affirmative. He notices that the soldier is in serious condition and has lost a lot of blood. The soldier offers to sit next to him against the wall, and they both sit down to rest. The soldier looks at Charlie briefly and asks if he is a member of the Night Watch. Charlie is surprised that the soldier doesn't recognize him, since they live in the same house. Assuming that the soldier can't see well, Charlie says that he is not a member of the Night Watch. The soldier laughs and says he doesn't believe it, claiming that a normal person wouldn't be able to handle that level of threat. Charlie mentally resents the way the soldier is talking to him, despite saving his life. The soldier laughs, joking about Charlie hitting the monster with soy sauce, and notes that it was quite ingenious. Charlie is amazed at how the soldier laughs in such a difficult situation, remarking that the people on Night Watch are awesome. The soldier asks what university Charlie attends and what course he's in. Charlie replies that he is a second-year student. The soldier inquires about his department. Without waiting for an answer, the soldier assumes that he is in the martial arts department, as he is too strong for humanities. Suddenly, the soldier asks if Charlie has any cigarettes. Charlie replies that he only has bicycles, but the soldier agrees to those as well. Charlie tells the soldier that the others were broken in the battle with the monster. After eating a cookie, the soldier asks Charlie if this is the first time he's killed someone by himself. Charlie confirms. The soldier admits that he has always admired the martial arts department and thinks his qualifications are inferior. Charlie advises the soldier to talk less to conserve his strength until help arrives. The soldier replies that everything is fine, and he just wanted to socialize. Charlie asks how the soldier got into the dark world as an art student and if he regrets it. The soldier replies that it was his personal choice and he has no regrets whatsoever. Unable to stand it, the soldier yells that he is a civilian who goes to work every day and interacts with girls, asking if this is a better life. The soldier starts coughing and Charlie again advises him to calm down or it will get bad. The soldier tells him that he sent a distress signal a long time ago and is sure help is on the way. Charlie gets up about to leave, but the soldier grabs him by the sleeve, advising him not to go alone, suggesting that they continue talking. Charlie reluctantly sits down and listens to the soldier's stories about his past. At the end, the soldier asks Charlie to give something to Director Joe of outstanding technology. Charlie says that the soldier can come and tell him everything himself. The soldier admits that he's been carrying everything around for a long time and was looking for someone to talk to. The soldier asks if Charlie has chopsticks and asks for a couple. Charlie notices that the soldier likes the chopsticks and smiles slightly. The soldier turns his head at the sounds from the side and says that it looks like the Night Watch has arrived. Charlie is glad that help has finally arrived and begins to prepare to leave. The soldier asks if Charlie will go with him, but Charlie replies that he will get home on his own. Sighing heavily, the soldier smiles and wishes Charlie a happy journey. Charlie thanks him and heads home, but is soon on his way back. Backup finds the Night Watch member and begins checking his vitals. Charlie notices that the wounded fighter's vitals are dropping dramatically. He begins to teleport away and wonders why the Night Watch can't help with this level of medicine. The fighters decide to salute the fallen soldier. Charlie tries to reach the dying soldier, but the crater engulfs him. Charlie finds himself back at the crosswalk among unsuspecting people. He recalls the Night's Watch video briefing, which stated that one must not give up even at the threshold of death. The rules of the Night's Watch are to take a strength-boosting pill, but there is a 90% risk of poisoning. Charlie returns home devastated, realizing that the soldier probably took the pill that killed him. Charlie now realizes why the soldier was always joking around and wanting to talk. Charlie tells himself that he will always remember the soldier, even though he left so quietly and humbly. He notices his life scale in the mirror, which is high even though he is barely standing. Charlie decides that physical fitness alone is not enough, and it is important to develop willpower. His thoughts are interrupted by Carol's question about eggs, and he drops his food in fear. Carol says he's not answering his phone and asks if he went to the chicken coop to get eggs. Charlie quickly makes up an excuse about standing in line for a long time. He then turns around and asks Carol how she got the keys to his apartment. Carol explains that Uncle Lee asked her to take care of him since he doesn't cook or order food. She examines Charlie and assumes he's been in a fight. Charlie awkwardly replies that Carol needs to go home so her father doesn't suspect anything wrong. However, Carol ignores his words and grabs him by his clothes and demands that he turn around. She notices that Charlie's clothes are torn and excitedly asks where he got so bruised. Charlie tries to break free, asking her to let go, but she demands an explanation. He makes up a story that he was attacked and robbed on his way home, but he caught up with his assailant, beat him up, and came home. Charlie brags that he has great reflexes for airboxing. Seeing the bruises on his face, Carol gently touches his cheeks. Charlie freezes, allowing Carol to examine him, realizing that she won't believe his version. After a pause, Carol asks if it hurts. Charlie is a little embarrassed and says he's fine, he just wants to sleep. Carol quickly backs away and says he should tell Uncle Lee everything because fighting at night is useless. Charlie grabs Carol's hand and begs her not to tell her uncle, saying he was just standing up for himself. Charlie falls theatrically to the floor, claiming he's too weak to go any further. Carol says he needs to go to the hospital, but he dodges, claiming he has everything he needs at home. Carol irritably asks if he expects her to give him medicine, to which he smiles and asks her to patch him up. Carol bandages his wounds without further ado, causing Charlie to yell in annoyance. She pats him on the shoulder and asks if he'll do it again. Charlie promises it won't happen again. Carol asks Charlie to lash out, but he replies that he can't promise that because the desire to fight is inherent in a man by nature. Carol begins to lightly punch Charlie and he promises not to get into any more fights. Having finished dressing, Carol says she's leaving. Charlie suggests she stay, mentioning his big bed. Carol turns around, shows him her tongue, and leaves the apartment. Left alone, Charlie recalls the soldier's request for a message for Beta. Suddenly, he jumps out of bed, realizing that he doesn't even know the name of his ally. Charlie decides to find information about the monster he recently destroyed. He wonders if the first one he killed will be shown to anyone else or will be absorbed into the shadows before the kill is registered. Charlie notices that he has gained the Stealthy Strike skill, a stealthy attack from the shadows that the enemy can't see. He decides to try out the new skill, stands in the center of the room and says its name. Nothing happens, and Charlie suspects something is wrong with the system. He thinks the problem might be the lack of a target to attack. Charlie decides to investigate himself and discovers that he is a stalker who feels at home in the shadows. He is perplexed as to why everything is spelled so confusingly and wonders what to do if he found himself in the light. The system tells him that his shadow has undergone a drastic change and he can now fully control it and merge with it. It also says that training in his new form will be more effective, which pleases Charlie. He is told that in the event of serious injuries, his blood volume will be delayed, slowing his recovery. Charlie jokes that it's better to die happy. Having finished learning his new abilities, Charlie decides to put them to the test and summons a shadow. After a few seconds, the shadow emerges from the floor and freezes, waiting for his commands. Charlie slowly reaches out his finger to the shadow, gently touching it. The touch causes him to gradually merge with the shadow, darkness enveloping his skin. Completely merged, Charlie decides to try out the new form. He begins to move at breakneck speed, turning into a shapeless blob of shadowy energy. After testing his speed, Charlie decides to test his strength and easily lifts the bed. Overjoyed with his new abilities, Charlie says aloud that he is now invincible. Charlie is pleased to note that the shadow form is invisible but very effective. The system suggests he take the Stalker skill, warning him of its uniqueness and risks. Charlie ponders the offer and decides the risk is worth it. But suddenly a shadow crawls out of the system window, preventing him from making a decision. The shadow envelops Charlie, drawing him into a shadow cocoon and interacting with his power. After the metamorphosis is complete, the system informs him that he is now an assassin, adding that if he doesn't kill, he will die himself. The system warns that his attacks can harm even a god, but killing will be inevitable. On the next screen, the system says that the shadow form will greatly enhance his killing ability. The system adds that Charlie can now activate a decapitation skill that depends on blood levels, strength, and other factors of both parties. Charlie guesses that this skill activated the last time he killed a shadow monster. He rejoices in his new abilities again, hoping that he is now invincible. Charlie is suddenly relieved and examines his wounds, noticing that he is completely healed. He assumes that the shadow form greatly enhances regeneration. The next morning, Carol's classmates notice a picture of Charlie on social media. One of Carol's friends says she heard Charlie got into a fight yesterday with a vendor who had a knife. Carol advises against believing these stories, adding that Charlie was actually being chased by a dog. Sometime later, Carol and 2 of her classmates arrive at Charlie's apartment. Suddenly, one of Carol's friends asks where she got the keys to Charlie's apartment, confusing her. Carol answers evasively and enters the apartment, saying she came to visit with her friends. Charlie sits in the center of the room, examining an unexpectedly open wound. Carol flies over to him and asks if he has any bandages left. Carol's friends start touching his new muscles, excited. Carol quickly stops them and orders them into the living room. The friends hear screams from the room and ask each other if Charlie is okay. Carol treats Charlie's wound, says she knows the ointment, and adds that it doesn't hurt at all. She notes that the wound needs to be treated thoroughly, but is distracted herself by looking at her feet. Carol tells Charlie that he fights too much. He replies that he'll be fine. Carol asks what he did yesterday, asking him not to lie and to be honest. Charlie says he did an act of chivalrous justice. Carol argues that he is clearly lying. Charlie wonders what time Uncle Lou got back, to which Carol replies that he didn't. Charlie says that it seems the Night Watch is working hard, and there is little free time to recover. Carol is silent, and Charlie realizes that she is very worried about her father. Charlie realizes that Night Watch members risk their lives every day. Uncle Lee was left without an arm, and Soldier Lin Mo died at age 20. Carol asks if Charlie would go on the night shift if he passed his martial arts exam. Charlie hesitates and asks if there will be beauties there. Carol doesn't appreciate Charlie's joke and pulls his cheek, telling him to shut up. Meanwhile, Carol's friends overhear their conversation outside the door. The guy asks the girl what's going on, and she replies that it's obvious. When the noise from the room subsides, the friends enter and wonder how Charlie is feeling. Charlie sits down on the couch, states that everything is fine, and motions for the guests to sit down. The guests settle down next to each other and Charlie begins to tell a fictional story about his adventures. Carol tells Charlie that she is going to the store and is taking his torn jacket to throw away. Charlie doesn't mind and continues to tell his guests his stories. Suddenly, he remembers that there are things in the jacket and rushes over to Carol, asking her to wait. Carol turns around and a package of feminine pads falls out of the jacket. Carol asks Charlie in surprise why he wants it. Charlie explains that he wanted to please Carol since she had a stomachache yesterday. The friends watch the cell phone scene, clearly intrigued. Charlie hands Carol the package, saying she can contact him if she needs to. Carol blushes and angrily yells at Charlie that he shouldn't have done that, and throws the package in his direction. Charlie, surprised by her reaction, rubs his forehead and doesn't understand why Carol is so outraged. After a while, Carol and her friends leave, leaving Charlie alone in the apartment. Charlie instantly activates the Shadow Apprentice skill, creating a portal to the Shadow World. While the portal is charging, he returns to his shadow form and begins to train. After a time, Charlie moves quietly into the Shadow World. Unexpectedly, he feels completely comfortable here. It feels like being out in nature after a long stay in a gassy city. Charlie also notices that his stomach no longer hurts, and his blood volume has increased significantly. Charlie starts training, but not calculating his strength takes off several meters. He is overwhelmed with energy and decides to train further. Charlie easily copes with difficult exercises such as push-ups. Suddenly, the system informs him that the Shadow Bite, which absorbs only darkness, has been activated. It adds that his physical condition is much improved. Charlie decides that the room is too small and goes outside. Outside, he tries out the exercises on the tourniquets and performs them with ease. Meanwhile, an important meeting begins at the Night's Watch headquarters. The speaker reports that the disturbances in the City of Shadows have become more frequent and unpredictable. He adds that the Night Watch has found gaps in the northern, southern, and eastern districts. Another attendee comments that, on the map, the pollution zones cover mostly residential areas. Uncle Lou, a meeting attendee, notices that the appearances of others have become more frequent. He recalls 4 cases in the last 2 days where people have been taken to the Shadow City. While this may seem like a small number, Uncle Lou doesn't know when to expect the next attack. He believes that the disturbance of the shadow layer is a bigger threat compared to the anomaly. Lou realizes that someone in the shadow layer might be like Godzilla who overdosed on steroids. Uncle Lee reminds the council that these are just suspicions and they shouldn't act like they've already lost. He asks those present if they really aren't ready to fight. No one answers his question, and he asks for the meeting to continue. Uncle Lou pulls out a pack of cigarettes, takes one in his teeth and reaches for a lighter. Suddenly he finds himself holding a cookie in his mouth, which Carol has substituted for the cigarettes. Uncle Lee decides to help, tosses Lou his backpack, and he catches it with no problem. However, Lou does not take the cigarettes and informs Uncle Lee that he is afraid of lung cancer. Uncle Lee chuckles at Lou's words but quickly switches to a more important topic. After a while, Uncle Lou asks Lee if the information is indeed confirmed and asks him to check his laptop. Lou opens the computer and a message pops up. All Rank 2 specialists should apply for children after the exam. Lou wonders which department Lee is going to send Charlie to. Lee replies that he'd rather Charlie pursue a regular trade than martial arts or humanities. Lou asks what will happen if Charlie passes the exam with flying colors. Lee makes an evasive answer and leaves the room after taking a deep breath. Lou asks him to be clearer and pay close attention to his assignment. A girl enters the room and informs them that they received a message from the shadow layer a few minutes ago. A new report on the others reveals a strange other that looks like an indistinct shadow. The creature is described as humanoid and was first spotted in the garden of the Chin Theater. The report also indicates that the shadow is constantly exercising and stops exercising and salutes when detectors approach. The girl adds that the observer has detected this other, about which there is no information in the databases. Lou studies the report and wonders who it is. Meanwhile, in the shadow layer, Charlie encounters a spider monster and comments that it has a lot of protein in it. He films the whole thing on his phone, noting that the spider meat is tasty and healthy. Charlie rejoices at the popularity of his shadow layer video and hopes it will go viral. He decides to launch a live broadcast and watches how many viewers join in. His joy is interrupted by a sudden notification from the system, causing him to almost drop his phone. The notification warns that if he doesn't act first, he will die, and that only after a series of murders will he be able to return to a peaceful life. Arlie is angry at the system for scaring him at the most unexpected moment. However, he notices that he has 100 hours to kill another. Shocked at the thought of possibly dying in 100 hours, Charlie is frozen in place. The time limit of 100 hours rolls around in his head and he tries to comprehend what is happening. Charlie studies the skill description, understands the risks, and realizes he is in big trouble. He calms himself down, deciding not to worry, but to come up with a plan immediately. Rereading the description of his abilities, Charlie decides that he needs to fulfill his role as a hunter and spring into action. He concludes that he can survive by killing others, and perhaps even gain immortality. The system adds that immortality may not only consist of not being able to die, but also of the soul passing into a new body after death, which puzzles Charlie. Charlie is skeptical of the system's claim that he enjoys killing, claiming that it brings him no pleasure. Collecting himself, he looks around the corner and sees a spider, deciding that he needs to kill it to get life points. Charlie places his phone next to the pot, securing it with a pebble to record the fight on camera. As he finishes preparing for the broadcast, he activates his shadow form. Charlie quietly interacts with the audience, cautiously approaching the sleeping spider with the bat. He looks forward to using the steel he spent several thousand yen on. Charlie strikes several blows, causing the spider to wake up and turn around. Realizing that it is hard to spot in its shadowy form, Charlie decides to study the monster's weaknesses. After circling the spider, Charlie notices a vulnerable point in the bite area and prepares to attack. Prior to Charlie's arrival, the spider has been nesting quietly outside, enjoying its comfortable surroundings. He believes that there is no oppressive atmosphere and you just have to be careful to live a peaceful life. The spider recalls a recent fight with some enemy, and despite his injuries, he got a good lunch. Determined to regain his strength, the spider is about to get some sleep. Suddenly, his instincts tell him that someone is watching him closely. The spider jumps up and looks around, but sees no one. Convinced that the place is not safe, the spider decides to spend the night somewhere else. Suddenly, the spider feels intense pain in its bite area as it is pierced by discharges of shadow lightning. Charlie stands behind the monster and notices that the shadow is flowing out of him like a river. He hopes to find another weak spot to unleash all his power. He tries to pull the bat out of the spider's wound, happy that there is only 40% blood left. However, the spider quickly releases a beam of red energy, throwing Charlie back against the wall. Clearing the dust, Charlie comforts himself that the blow didn't hurt him. The spider spins around in a rage and looks for the offending spider, but Charlie realizes that the spider can't see him and that the hit was accidental. Charlie gets up and decides to use a shadow attack, diving under the ground as if it were water. Watching the spider from below, Charlie enjoys the shadow attack. Charlie decides that there is no need to fight the spider face to face if he can wait for the perfect moment for the killing blow. The spider continues to spin, and the trapped bat causes a small amount of bleeding. Charlie realizes that the moment has come for the final blow. Meanwhile, on the streaming platform, the viewer browses the feeds of bloggers who discuss a variety of topics. In addition to streams about unusual phenomena, she stumbles upon content about traveling, social experiments, and other interesting avenues. The viewer is a bored, gray-haired girl switching channels in search of something interesting. Suddenly, she stumbles upon a stream by Charlie, known by the pseudonym Yo. The girl watches with interest, mesmerized by the real battles with others. Charlie continues the broadcast, telling her that he is fighting a spider, an ancient ghost of the first rank. The girl gets annoyed at the skeptical comments from Yo's viewers and thinks she can't stand that attitude. The girl quickly enters the chat room and offers Yo her help. Suddenly, the stream shows Charlie crawling out of the shadows next to the spider. The girl is surprised, guessing that someone else is doing the broadcast. Satisfied, she hangs up the phone and decides to stay, noting that things are much more interesting now. Charlie leaps out of the shadows and flies over the unsuspecting spider. However, the spider hears the whistle of Charlie's blow and turns around to meet it with a stinging blow. The stinger pierces the surface, causing heavy smoke from the rock shards. When the smoke clears, the spider discovers that there is no one at the site of the blow. Someone pokes a finger at the spider from the other side, and it turns around, trying to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, Charlie continues to film himself and taunt the confused monster. He increasingly dodges the spider's attacks, only taunting it in return. The girl marvels at Charlie's speed, noting that he is incredibly handsome and fast. The spider decides to change tactics and spews a jet of purple acid. The acid forms a puddle around him, eliminating the possibility of a stealthy approach from the ground. Charlie asks the spider if he really thinks the acid coating the ground will stop him. He climbs onto the building next to the spider, lighting up with blue fire and revealing his location. Preparing to attack, Charlie transforms into a shadow blob and rushes through the building towards the spider. The spider shoots streams of acid, coating the building Charlie flies through. Charlie easily teleports into another shadow, thinking he can go through buildings all he wants. He does a series of shadow jerks, pulls the bat out of the spider's body, and appears right underneath it. Wasting no time, Charlie strikes the spider's head with the bat, killing it in one blow. Stepping away from the breathless body, Charlie uses the Shadow Bite skill to absorb the powers of the defeated monster. Having absorbed the enemy's powers, Charlie says that his hunt is over for the day. The girl admits that it was incredibly exciting, and she hasn't seen such a sight in a long time. She decides to contact the blogger Yo and writes him a message asking him to take her on a mission. Charlie studies the spider, assessing its characteristics and features. After learning that spiders are rather weak opponents, Charlie sighs disappointedly, hoping that he has defeated a stronger enemy. He notes that he used a shadow attack to bridge the large power gap between him and the spider. Charlie finishes the broadcast, satisfied with the 150 viewers. He tests his abilities again and decides to try out the Shadow Net skill. Charlie concentrates and shoots a black substance resembling spider rope into a building. He pulls himself up on the rope and shouts joyfully that he succeeded. However, due to his enthusiasm, he fails to react in time and crashes face first into the wall. Charlie falls on the lantern and tells himself that he needs to practice this skill more. After checking his statuses in the system, Charlie notices that his lifespan has increased to 7 days and gets upset at the slight increase. He decides that although he has a week, it's not easy to find others, so it's best to reassure himself. Charlie logs in again and unlocks the Mark skill, which allows him to tag a target. The system tells him that the mark only lasts for 1 second on a single target, but the time will increase as his reputation increases. This ability will also reveal Charlie's location, so he should use it with caution. When hunting a marked target, the hunter's speed and agility will increase, and upon successful completion of the hunt, one of the skills will be permanently enhanced. Charlie wonders when he gained his reputation, but quickly realizes it was due to the live broadcast. A plan matures in Charlie's head. He decides to hunt others and gain subscribers to increase his reputation. Charlie jumps to the ground, realizing that he has a lot of work to do today, and decides to work hard. Charlie quickly finds a new opponent, who turns out to be much bigger and stronger than the previous one. Marking his target, he confidently rushes down, preparing for a sneak attack. After a while, Carol treats Charlie's wounds, listening to him complain of unbearable pain. She asks who he fought this time. Charlie, confident, tells Carol not to worry because he's going to be a hero, adding that she won't understand that. Carol is unimpressed by his words, and she sarcastically remarks how many heroes complain of pain every day. Carol advises Charlie not to risk it if he doesn't have the right skills, but he quietly mutters that he can heal his wounds in seconds with his shadow form, adding that he doesn't turn it on at all to help him. Carol asks what he just said. Charlie quickly picks himself up and changes the subject, suggesting they watch a movie. Carol replies that there is nothing interesting right now, but mentions a blogger who has gotten everyone's attention. She approaches Charlie and shows him a recording of his own broadcast on his phone. Out of surprise, Charlie spits out his water and starts coughing violently. Carol steps aside and asks what caused this reaction. Charlie tries to brush it off in generalities, then asks how often she watches that blogger. Carol moves closer again and says she's been following him for 2 days now, noting that he's become incredibly popular and unusual. Charlie begins to worry that such a rapid rise in popularity might attract the attention of the Night Watch and asks Carol if posting the crimes of others is a crime. Carol remarks that it's not appropriate to reveal information about the others, but in her opinion, Yo's blogger show doesn't affect people, so she doesn't see a problem with it. She moves even closer to Charlie to better show the video and says she wants to follow the example of Yo, who argues so skillfully with the others. Carol also mentions that one of the bloggers has already analyzed Yo's video. Charlie smiles and silently watches, admiring her interest. After watching, Carol asks Charlie if she could ever be as famous as she is. Charlie asks Carol with a smile what she plans to do and jokes if she will wear a white silk dress and dance in a shadow layer. Carol is embarrassed and admits that she was thinking of making some videos about the others. Charlie cautions her that it might be too informative. He adds that if she goes out in public dressed like that, fans will start following her, and it could end badly. Carol's face changes and she begins to suspect something, whereupon she asks what he meant. Suddenly, coming up behind her, she pulls out a gun and points it at Charlie's back. Irritated, she asks if he got hurt when he was tracking someone down himself. Charlie quickly raises his hands and loudly admits that he was just kidding. Carol, with suspicion in her voice, asks Charlie how she knows he isn't lying. Charlie begs her to let him go, calling himself an officer. After Carol leaves, Charlie decides to take a break, plops down on the couch and pulls out his phone. He checks his messages and sees that he has been inundated with skeptical claims that his video is fake. The protagonist is perplexed as to why he is considered a fraud, puzzling over it. Charlie clicks on one of the links and is taken to a video where a user named EarthDao promises to expose him. EarthDao mockingly describes Charlie, claiming that his videos are not real. As proof, he points to several shots where the transitions look unnatural, hinting at editing. The blogger also points to the background, suggesting it's a superimposed special effect. Charlie is perplexed as to why EarthDao, a former food blogger, decided to expose him. EarthDao claims that he is a freelance member of the Night Watch and easily recognizes fakes. Charlie opens the comments and sees that some viewers agree with EarthDao, stating that the truth will come out soon. Deciding to start hunting others, Charlie realizes that he needs to teach EarthDao a lesson first. Charlie activates the shadow pupil again and dives into the shadow layer with renewed vigor. This time he attaches a mini camera to his shoulder to make filming look more natural. Watching the town, Charlie notices that the others are much smaller today, remembering that the shadow layer sometimes resets. After much searching, he finally spots a 6th-rank creature and decides it's time to start hunting. Taking out a bat enhanced with shadow powers, Charlie curiously ponders what the other 6th-ranked creature is capable of. Charlie rushes to the edge of the building, intending to collapse on the other, but doesn't find him at the bottom. Frustrated, he quickly descends the stairs. On the lower level, he finally encounters another who is also looking for victims. Concentrating, Charlie casts a marking spell on his unsuspecting foe. Once the mark is set, the other immediately senses Charlie's presence and his heart begins to beat faster. Charlie notices the other is gripped by an inexplicable fear and begins to look around panickedly for a threat. The protagonist notes the similarities between this creature and the monster he fought at the beginning of his journey. But now, according to Charlie, he himself is stronger and ready to fight much better than before. Charlie strikes, piercing the monster with a bat using the 6-strike technique. The other takes serious damage and his life force drops to 45%, eliciting a piercing scream of pain. In an attempt to escape, the other flies into the air, but Charlie rushes after him, reactivating the tag and increasing the effects of the chase. Charlie delivers a crushing blow, but the creature deftly dodges, making quick jerks in the air. The monster tries a quick counterattack going behind Charlie's back, but Charlie instantly bounces off the wall with his feet. Upon landing, Charlie swings his bat and rushes towards his opponent. However, the other opens its mouth, releasing its tentacles to accumulate psionic energy. The psionic attack makes Charlie dizzy and he loses the initiative. Without letting him regain his senses, the monster delivers several psionic blows that make Charlie fall over. Rising to his feet, Charlie notices that his blood count has dropped 34% in just one blow. Realizing that the situation is becoming critical, the protagonist decides to urgently change his strategy. The monster continues to attack Charlie with his blades, but Charlie deftly dodges by diving into the shadows. The monster corners the shadow and strikes nearby to block Charlie's maneuvers. Suddenly, Charlie disappears from sight and appears on top of the monster, preparing for a series of powerful blows. He goes into super speed, throwing dozens of punches per second as he continues to move subtly around his opponent. The monster tries to escape, but Charlie delivers a powerful elbow strike, knocking it to the ground. Running up to the defeated foe, Charlie prepares to decapitate the monster once and for all. Suddenly, the other's face begins to dissolve and Charlie sees the Lin Mo soldier he fought with against his first enemy. Charlie hesitates, not understanding why Lin Mo became like this or how he ended up here. The other takes advantage of this moment, throwing Charlie back with a blast of dark energy and breaking free of his grip. The monster immediately begins to run away, giving Charlie no answers. Charlie rushes in pursuit, desperately asking the monster to stop, but loses sight of it after a few minutes. The system reports that the hunt was almost successful, but things went wrong at the last moment. It warns that repeated failures will shorten his life and weaken him. The system reminds Charlie that if the hunt doesn't become his life, his days will slowly melt away as he awaits death. Enraged, Charlie punches the system's screen, which keeps repeating the same thing. He contemplates what a hero who sacrifices himself to save others becomes. Charlie wonders if he will turn into a monster when he dies. However, after realizing that there is no turning back, he decides to continue hunting. Charlie arrives at East District Number 1, one of the gathering places. Using his shadow pupil, he creates a portal and moves to the roof to better assess the situation. Charlie senses the presence of others, but realizes that they are unlikely to leave the building. Turning around, he notices a large monster on the roof of a neighboring building. Charlie sees that the monster has a damaged leg, which may give him an advantage in battle. He cautiously creeps up behind it, crawling out of the shadows, but the monster hears him. The monster turns around sharply, but Charlie instantly slips back into the shadows. He notices the red dots on the monster's body and guesses that they make it so sensitive. Charlie decides to use this to calm his target. Patiently waiting for the monster to let its guard down again, Charlie finally finds the right moment to attack. Appearing above the monster, Charlie activates the mark and boldly enters the fray. Meanwhile, Carol is in Charlie's kitchen when she hears the door closing and asks where he's been without turning around. Turning around, she sees Uncle Lee and Lou, who notices that she's cooking for Charlie again, half-jokingly muttering that she seems to be raising a daughter for him. Carol is embarrassed and turns away, telling her father he's talking nonsense again. She asks her uncles why they are back so early. They reply that they finished work early, and that's why they got together. Carol's father suggests that they all go to a restaurant, but Carol objects that there's no need since dinner is almost ready. Uncle Lee sits down at the table and suggests going to the restaurant another day, inviting the others to join him. He asks where Charlie is, and Carol assumes he's out for a walk and will be back soon. Lee resents Charlie for going out to have fun, leaving Carol alone. But at that moment, the front door opens. Charlie enters, stating that he is insanely hungry, and adds that the apartment smells deliciously of her cooking. He turns to Carol and says that he's in a good mood, so he bought her favorite candy. Then, noticing her messages, asks if she missed him. Carol and the uncles meet his words with meaningful silence and awkward glances. Charlie assumes the most innocent look and explains that he was late because he was attacked by a dog on the way. Uncle Lee says that such encounters are rare and asks Charlie not to spoil the fun, but to just sit down at the table. When Charlie sits down, Uncle Lee pats him on the shoulder, noting that it's good for a guy to get in a fight once in a while. Uncle Lou picks up on it, adding that there's nothing wrong with showing off to a girl when she's young. Uncle Lee mentions that he saw Lou with a girl recently and asks about her. Lou vividly describes her virtues, adding that if he were young, he would give anything for a girl like that. Lou's uncle raises his glass, offering a drink to the success of all present. Charlie notices Carol blush when her father speaks of his girlfriend, and smiles slyly. Charlie then raises the next toast, particularly to Uncle Lou, realizing that these two could easily leave him in an uncomfortable position. Charlie adds with a smile that Uncle Lou should eat more vegetables, since he is often away from home and rarely gets to enjoy Carol's home-cooked meals. He confidently states that Carol often cooks at home, for her cooking skills are top-notch. Uncle Lou, upon reflection, realizes that Carol does take care of Charlie a lot, while he himself eats takeout food more often. After a while, Carol and Uncle Lou say goodbye to Charlie and Uncle Lee and go home. Left alone, Charlie offers Uncle Lee a drink of water, but he refuses. Suddenly, Uncle Lee takes a serious look at Charlie and says he has an important question to ask him. He looks at Charlie carefully and asks him what he thinks he has. Uncle Lee, with a serious look on his face, says that he's been on night watch for 20 years and has had no trouble recognizing Charlie's injuries. Then he asks when he started having powers. Charlie, a little nervous, sits down next to his uncle on the couch and confesses that his abilities started showing up half a month ago. Uncle Lee, trying to calm him down, asks him to tell him how it happened and not to worry. Charlie replies that he didn't fully understand how it happened because it happened too suddenly. Uncle Lee is surprised, noting that situations like this are extremely rare. Charlie jokingly suggests that it's all due to his exceptional talents. Uncle Lee responds to this modesty with an understanding silence and puts his hand on Charlie's shoulder. He informs them that there will be a test this year, and everyone must take a martial arts exam. Charlie says that he and Carol already know about it, and Uncle Lee takes out a cigarette. He adds that the Night Watch unit has been under a lot of pressure in recent years, and the casualty rate has been steadily rising. Lee offers Charlie a backup plan in case he fails the martial arts exam. He says that Charlie can choose from several schools, adding that if he likes comic books, he can go to an art department or another one that he likes. Charlie asks Uncle Lee with a smirk if he can just pick up his diploma and not go anywhere. Lee immediately slaps him in the face, sternly stating that he shouldn't even dream of that. He insists that Charlie should go to Lindong University, get a stable job, and live happily ever after with Carol. Charlie, scratching the back of his head, admits that's not what he really wants. Charlie admits that he wants to try to become a special member of the Night Watch. Uncle Lee yells at him, demanding that Charlie listen to him instead of arguing. Charlie threatens that if Uncle Lee won't let him, he'll still go on the Night Watch and pawn him off. Uncle Lee warns that this world is more dangerous than anything Charlie could imagine, and again suggests that he study quietly and not worry. Charlie replies that he's serious too, adding that danger is everywhere, and Uncle Lee can't protect him forever. Uncle Lee gives up, saying that Charlie may regret his decision, but if he changes his mind, he can always ask for help. Charlie asks Uncle Lee to stay out of his way, to which he just waves him off and says goodbye. Before he leaves, Charlie tells his uncle that, according to the information he learned from Carol, special people should use all their powers before they die, so they don't turn into a monster. Charlie wonders if there's a chance that a person will become different even if they exhaust their powers, and gets an affirmative answer. Uncle Lee, wary of asking why he's interested, hears from Charlie that it's just a sporting interest. Lee warns that if Charlie chooses the martial arts path, he will face this reality sooner or later. He advises Charlie to take a break and stop fighting while there is still time. Uncle Lee adds that the competition will take place before the new year, and if Charlie wants to win, he needs to prepare seriously. After that, Lee walks away, leaving Charlie alone. Charlie, sitting on the couch, ponders why Lin Mo turned into someone else. Charlie remembers that the Night Watch takes all the people from the battlefield, regardless of their abilities. He doesn't rule out that he could have been mistaken, and that the other person he fought had the ability to induce hallucinations. Meanwhile, one of Charlie's viewers goes to his blog and is excited to notice the new video. However, reading the comments, she notices that the number of haters and skeptics has increased significantly. The girl gets comfortable and starts sending angry replies to everyone who disagrees with the blogger. After expressing her opinion, she convinces herself that blogger Ye is definitely not a liar. She turns on the video and immerses herself in watching thanks to the mini camera attached to Charlie's body. Charlie jumps off the roof, making her fear he will fall to his death. But a few feet off the ground, Charlie uses a shadow net and starts swinging on it, causing his female fan to cheer. Suddenly, Charlie is struck by a beam of otherworldly energy, knocking him off his feet and dropping him to the ground. Another comes closer and pins Charlie down with a paw to keep him from escaping. This time, Charlie faces a large opponent who is clearly serious, but Charlie breaks free of the grip, takes off, and uses a shadow net to take down the monster. The girl, watching Charlie's shadow form, marvels at how incredibly handsome he is. With undisguised delight, she continues to watch Charlie fight the huge monster. The girl notices that everything looks too natural, and there can be no mistaking the verisimilitude. She is convinced that Charlie is the real killer of the others from Beidou. Charlie meanwhile uses Shadow Bite on a defeated opponent to absorb his essence. The girl assumes that Charlie absorbs the essence to gain additional abilities. She recalls him doing the same thing after a fight with a giant spider. Sometime later, Charlie returns home and examines his wounds in the mirror. Charlie notices that the others in the area are very strong and admits that if they weren't injured, he wouldn't have survived. He opens his phone and stumbles upon a new video from Earth Tao, who is once again analyzing content from blogger Yo. Watching the video, Charlie hears Earth Tao claim that the one Charlie fought was injured and weak, adding that even an ordinary person could have handled such an opponent. Earth Tao states that the Special One would not waste time on such weaklings. Charlie admits that the fight didn't turn out too spectacular, but he's still pissed off by such videos. He ponders that his current strength is still not enough for anything more. Charlie decides that he must become so strong that no one dares to doubt him. Charlie opens the system window and sees what the data shows. Despite his impressive appearance, he is actually weak. Angry at this notification, Charlie says that he can give his uncles and even Carol a head start in terms of strength. However, he recognizes that his current abilities are not enough and he needs to get even stronger. Charlie realizes that his shadow points are not indicators of experience as he had previously thought, but rather reflect his energy reserves. He estimates that using a shadow thread or shadow pupil requires about 3 points. He further calculates that tag and chase consume different amounts of energy, and that the effectiveness of the shadow form depends on the environment. Charlie summarizes his thoughts, recognizing that the spies are very powerful, and he can only fight them in his shadow form, though even in that state he won't last long. He doesn't give up, however, figuring that even that will be enough to at least intimidate them. Charlie tells himself that restraint is not his strong suit, so he will do his best. After a while, Charlie goes shopping with Carol and her friends. He yells irritably at the girls, accusing them of lying, since they promised it wouldn't take more than an hour. Charlie grumbles to himself that if he continues to waste time on such things, he won't last a few days. And Carol's friend jokingly warns him not to mess around with such things. Charlie says seriously that he's not kidding, explaining that if he doesn't kill, he'll die. The interlocutor asks in surprise what he means, but Charlie waves it off, noticing that the girls have finally returned. Carol suggests going to a cafe, and the whole group heads there, not noticing the dark entity following them. Charlie takes the girls to his favorite cafe, and Carol studies the menu, which serves steamed bovine genitalia, among other things. Charlie jokes that he's recently been injured, so he orders several dishes at once. Carol, gritting her teeth, is surprised that Charlie chose so many ordinary dishes without opting for the exotic. Charlie agrees, noting that the dishes are indeed simple, and asks the waiter to add oysters to the order. When the order is brought, Charlie holds out an oyster to Carol, but she jokingly refuses. Carol's phone rings and she reads a message that her martial arts exam is coming up early. Carol's friend also receives this message and is surprised that the exam will now be mandatory. Carol's friend confirms this and complains that the event has been moved up. Charlie tries to cheer up his friend by patting him on the shoulder and jokingly saying that his qualifications are still not enough. The young man replies that at the age of 7 he was badly frightened by the other, and while he was destroyed, he developed a mental illness. Charlie doesn't miss the opportunity to show off and starts bragging that he would have done something different in such a situation and solved it in a matter of minutes. Carol remarks that most people in this situation would just run away, adding that even if everything seems normal, the others won't back down. The mood of the company begins to sink from such gloomy thoughts, and Charlie decides to lighten the mood by offering everyone a drink. He tries to make a toast, but they are interrupted by a loud siren that echoes throughout the mall. Carol's face turns serious, and she says that it's a pollution sensor siren, which means the other is trespassing. The crowd starts to run out of the building in a panic, creating chaos and not letting anyone through. Carol's friend Carol notices in her panic that there are too many people and it will be impossible to get out. Carol tries to calm everyone down, advising them to keep cool and move slowly toward the exit. But Charlie solves the problem in a simpler way by punching a hole in the wall so they can get out faster. Running outside, he turns to his friends and urges them to hurry. Charlie looks around and notices a red shadow portal beginning to form nearby. After a few seconds, a huge man, the likes of which Charlie has never seen before, appears out of the portal. Charlie quickly realizes that there are too many people around. Transforming now would be risky. Grabbing Carol's hand, he swiftly drags her and her friends away from danger. Carol notices that there must be barriers near the mall, not understanding how outsiders could have gotten in here. Charlie replies briefly that now is not the time to think about it. They need to run now. They find an exit and rush toward it when suddenly everything around them begins to change. The building begins to shake and Charlie yells at his friends to hold on to him. But the floor beneath them collapses and they fall. Charlie regains consciousness, quickly checks himself and asks if the others are okay. Carol and her friend say they are fine, with only scratches. But their friend is less fortunate. A rock has caught his foot. Charlie comes running over, promising to help and telling them not to panic. He picks up the rock easily and tosses it aside. Carol takes out a box of pills and gives them to her friend, assuring him that it will help. The friend wonders why it's so dark and asks where they are. Carol admits that she doesn't know, as she's never been in a situation like this. Charlie assumes they are on one of the floors of the mall and goes to investigate. After a moment, he feels a familiar feeling like being on the hunt. He realizes the entire floor, or maybe the mall, has been transported to the shadow layer. Charlie sees that many people are in urgent need of help. He knows there is no transportation in the shadow layer, and it will take a long time for the night watch to get here. The biggest threat, he thinks, is the risk of staying here for long periods of time, which could lead to serious contamination, not to mention possible encounters with dangerous creatures. Charlie asks Carol if the watch her father gave her is far away. Carol remembers the watch and says she has it. She activates it and says that she sent a signal for help so that the night watch would arrive faster. Charlie points out that this watch is also protected from contamination. He decides to stay alert, waiting for a possible attack. Shadow lumps appear on the floor and people scream about the monster. But Charlie realizes that the building is shaking again and they fall another floor. Carol comes to her senses, calling her friends by name loudly, hoping they'll respond. Martha is the first to respond, reassuring her that she's okay, then Fred responds as well. Martha notices a huge crack nearby and is horrified to think that Charlie might have fallen there. In another part of the building, Charlie's onlooker comes to her senses, trying to realize what happened. She remembers running out of the mall with her friend Gerda, but everything faded after the alarm sounded. Turning around, the girl sees her friend's body crushed by debris. A huge other suddenly appears in front of her and swings his blade to kill her. She thinks bitterly that she didn't expect to be in a horror movie, hoping someone would come to the rescue. At the last moment, Charlie, who has taken on shadow form, intercepts the monster's attack. He activates his new ability, Shadow Claw, making his blows deadly. Charlie rushes into the fray, teleporting over the other and preparing to strike with his claws. But the shadow spirit deftly dodges, leaping away from Charlie's attacks. At that moment, the girl lets out a delighted scream, realizing that her favorite blogger is in front of her, much to Charlie's surprise. She starts running around him, claiming to be a fan, watching every video and confessing that she really likes him. Charlie, trying to remain polite, notices that her dress and tights are torn, to which she, smiling flirtatiously, asks where he's looking. She adds that if he doesn't like it, she can quickly change into new clothes. Charlie, holding back a smile, asks if she will change her tights, to which she replies that she would do anything for him. At this point, the monster attacks again, and Charlie earnestly declares that now is not the time to talk, preparing for battle. Charlie begins the hunt, disappearing into the shadows to stealthily sneak up on his enemy from behind. He skillfully uses a shadow net to catch the monster by the back of the head and knock it down. As he tries to finish off his foe with his claws, Charlie sees him dodge and dodge in midair. Charlie realizes that this enemy has incredible strength and agility, or he would have fallen long ago. He takes off, preparing for another attack. But the monster meets him with a double blade strike, throwing Charlie backwards. As he rises, Charlie sees the monster disintegrate into several spears. The girl takes pictures on her phone, wishing Charlie good luck and promising to wear stockings if he wins. Inspired by her words, Charlie rushes into battle against the outnumbered enemy with redoubled determination. Charlie deftly dodges the enemy's heavy attacks that leave explosions on the ground. To prevent the enemy from striking again, he uses a shadow net to entangle his blades. Taking advantage of this, Charlie strikes 2 deadly blows, killing 2 shadow creatures at once. He rejoices in his success, but suddenly misses a blow from behind. Another one pierces his shoulder. Charlie manages to get out of range and retreats, thinking of new tactics. He notices that the others are acting in a coordinated manner, which was not the case before. Charlie realizes that the old tactics won't work and decides to attack the enemy from afar to gain victory. The monster, as if anticipating Charlie's actions, easily dodges the shadow matter shot. Charlie is amazed that his trick, which has always worked, has failed this time. The monster copies itself again, attacking at the same time so Charlie doesn't have time to dodge. Charlie realizes that going into the shadows won't help and tries to block the blows. His health quickly drops to 45% and he realizes he won't last that long. Charlie lures his enemies to a convenient location and uses an ability that makes them lose their mental clarity out of fear. Taking advantage of the confusion, he begins to destroy them one by one. Upon reaching the marked monster, Charlie applies decapitation, delivering a fatal blow. The monster dies and Charlie decides to rest. A new system message appears on the screen. The system reports that the hunt has been completed successfully. His shadow form has strengthened, and abilities now require fewer shadow points. Charlie restores his blood points and asks the others why they stopped. He decides, if the enemies don't attack, he will attack himself and rushes back into the battle. Suddenly, as Charlie pulls away from the enemies, a flash of light explodes nearby. Charlie is surprised. The flash was in the shadow layer. He starts looking for the source. The light catches Charlie's attention and he feels a strange urge to join the others. The source of the flame turns out to be Night Watch Commander Murphy, who possesses the Eternal Torch skill. Using his power, he tackles several opponents and focuses his attention on Charlie, who confidently declares that he can handle himself. Suddenly, another opponent appears behind Murphy and destroys him. Charlie is impressed by the commander's strength and thinks that if he had hit him himself, he would have disappeared instantly. Approaching the night guards, Charlie tells them that they were a little late and almost allowed him to be defeated. When asked about his condition, he replies that he's fine and asks them to take care of the girl he found. As he leaves, Charlie says he's leaving the girl to them and disappears into the shadows, heading for his friends. Murphy asks an ally if they know such a person, to which the ally replies that it's a famous streamer, though not too powerful. Murphy notes that he had a torch, and the shadow form was unharmed. He decides to take the girl home first before checking out this blogger. Carol searches for Charlie among the mountains of corpses, yelling his name loudly. Turning on the flashlight on her watch, she whispers that Charlie couldn't have died. Charlie, covered in rocks, responds to his lover and holds out his hand for her to notice him. Charlie says that he is about to be crushed, and Carol starts throwing rocks off him in a panic. After removing a few rocks, Carol easily pulls Charlie out with one hand. She notices that the rocks didn't put any pressure on him, and Charlie jokes back. Carol sees the wound on Charlie's back and asks where it came from, but he doesn't remember when he got it. To change the subject, Charlie wonders where Martha and Fred are now. Carol informs him that the night guard evacuated them to safety. Charlie asks why she stayed behind to look for him, to which she replies that she wouldn't be able to look Uncle Lee in the eye if something happened to him. Charlie walks over to Carol and hugs her tightly, glad she is staying with him. Carol is shy and asks him to let her go, but he continues to hold her, talking about scary opponents with blades. Charlie admits that he is very scared and asks Carol to stay with him a little longer, to which she threatens to beat him up. Their flirtation is interrupted by a bright, warm light and a calm female voice. A female member of the Night Watch staff approaches and asks if everything is all right, having heard the screams. Carol abruptly pushes Charlie away and says that everything is fine. The employee promises to walk them to the exit. Charlie leaves, saddened that he forgot to absorb the essences of the defeated monsters and lost his shadow glasses. A short while later, Charlie and the other survivors arrive at the Night Watch Tower. The interviewer asks Charlie his name, age, and if he plans to enroll this year. Interviewer Stella explains that the latest incident requires psychological help for some of the survivors. She warns that if the exam is taken during counseling, the grade may be lowered. Charlie replies that there is nothing wrong with him and claims that he doesn't need therapy. Stella explains that psychological traumas can be hidden, and when they are discovered, it can be too late. Stella adds that therapy is mandatory, whereupon Charlie clarifies that he only has 10 days left before his exam. Stella explains that there have been similar cases over the years, and the Night's Watch has developed a special policy for such situations. Under that policy, she says, it is possible to apply in advance. She explains that the pre-test is administered during night patrols, and the results are counted as if it were an exam. Charlie reports that he has a guardian who works night duty. Stella says that makes things easier, and asks Charlie to tell her his name as she prepares to write it down. Charlie mentions that his guardian is a civilian and his name is Lee, much to Stella's surprise. She repeats her uncle's name and leans over to Charlie, asking if he really works as a civilian. Charlie is startled and asks if his uncle has been fired, fearing he said something inappropriate. Stella gets up and offers to take him to his uncle, asking him to follow her. Charlie and Stella walk through the huge headquarters of the Night's Watch, and Charlie looks around. Members of the Night's Watch walk past them, discussing Yo's blogger and claiming they have no such person. Charlie tenses when he hears the conversations, and Stella asks if everything is okay. Charlie jokes that he's just worried, assuring him that they'll find him soon, while Stella suggests that he rest in the room until Lee arrives. Upon entering the room, Charlie sees that Carol and all of his friends are there. Carol is focused on the girl Charlie saved and is discussing Yo, the blogger, with her. Charlie notices the girl and thinks her presence could cause a lot of problems. Carol suggests that Charlie sit down and asks the girl to continue her story about Yo. The girl tells her that she saw Charlie fight 10 enemies at once and destroyed them all in an instant. She adds that when the others could no longer move, the Night's Watch arrived and Charlie disappeared into the shadows, leaving his laurels behind. Carol wonders who this Charlie is and says that he is clearly not from the Night's Watch. The girl assumes that this blogger is just a student, as he is clearly fascinated by girls' legs, especially if they are naked like hers. The girl concludes that the blogger looks a lot like Charlie and points her finger at him. Carol jumps sharply at Charlie, asking if he wants to die, and waves her fist. Their argument is interrupted when Uncle Lou bursts into the room. He turns to Carol, asking if she's okay after falling into the shadow layer. Carol pulls Charlie's cheek and assures her that she's fine, adding that Charlie is fine too. Lou smiles slightly and says that since everything is fine, they should follow him. Carol and Charlie follow Uncle Lou into a small room, where he notes that this is the first time the whole store has been in the shadow layer. Uncle Lou takes out a cigarette and says that because of this incident, the test will be held earlier. Seeing Carol's stern look, he decides not to smoke and puts the cigarette away. He explains that there are 2 parts to the test. The first test's aptitude and the second test's willpower. The first part, called the initial awakening, involves facing defilement. The second part evaluates their spiritual willpower and determines if they can become special. Charlie asks if willpower is the key to victory, to which Uncle Lou replies that it is not. In his opinion, willpower is not only the ability to endure pain, but also to believe in good and evil, and to resist evil thoughts. Charlie asks his uncle if glasses affect willpower, to which he perplexedly asks why he would want to know. Carol says resentfully that someone is distracted by the girl's legs, which confuses Charlie. Uncle Lou continues that these 3 aspects are the most important. He explains that if these 3 aspects are distorted and the heart is filled with negativity, everything will go to waste. He adds that evil thoughts attract evil and negative emotions pollute the environment. Uncle Lou explains that the accumulation of such emotions leads to tremendous pollution. In his opinion, all negative emotions must be released or else they will lead to trouble. Charlie wonders for a moment what negative emotions Carol might have. However, he gets stuck thinking about her feet and loses his ability to think. Uncle Lou tells Charlie and Carol to go back, as the trials will begin soon. He also informs Charlie that his uncle may not return quickly, so he signed all the papers for him. Uncle Lou advises him not to worry and just go with the flow. Charlie and Carol promise to follow his advice and watch him leave. After a while, Charlie and Carol return to the room and ask the gray-haired girl where the others have gone. She replies that the workmen took them away. Carol wonders why the girl didn't leave, to which she explains that her parents are in business and recently left town, so her admission papers had to be signed remotely. Charlie and Carol are distracted by Fred, who is being wheeled in a wheelchair by Martha. Fred tells them that they put some medicine on his leg, and now the pain is gone. Charlie tells Fred that he has a serious injury and asks if he really wants to take the test. Fred replies that the injury won't affect the results. Martha warns the heroes to ignore Fred's smug face as he was sobbing in the corner a few minutes ago. Charlie looks up and sees the main doors open and many people enter. Looking closer, he notices that everyone has a wistful and sad look on their faces. Charlie asks what the reason for their moods is. Carol explains that they just want to live a peaceful life. She adds that after the test, they will probably start to notice changes. Stella enters the room, looks around at everyone, and says it's safe to begin. She begins the instructions, informing them that the test has 2 parts: aptitude testing and willpower. According to Stella, Aptitude testing will reveal potential, destructive power, and self-control, while willpower testing is aimed at testing resistance to contamination. She adds that in past years, Level 1 subjects were not allowed to take the test, but this year, everyone without exception must take the test. Stella continues that a subject with enough willpower will be able to resist infection. If willpower is insufficient compared to ability, then the test will have to be given to civilian workers only. After finishing reading the instructions, Stella loudly slams the book shut and orders everyone to follow her. The examiners head to the waiting room and try to occupy themselves before the exam begins. After a while, a speaker on the wall calls Martha to the test. The doors of the testing room swing open with a loud sound, and Martha, gathering all her will, walks inside. In the large room before her stands a man and a mysterious object covered with a blanket. The man removes the cover from the object, and it turns out to be a huge white crystal. As the test progresses, the lights in the waiting room go out and the test subjects only watch the flashing red light above the doors. Carol and Fred press against the glass door, trying to see something and resenting the fact that they can't see anything. Charlie notes that he feels as confident as a fish in water in the shadowy layer. As he approaches the glass, he notices that a stone with a faint glow is attached to his leg. Charlie assumes that Martha has encountered something powerful and wonders if she can pass the test. However, the ordeal is quickly over and the waiting room is flooded with bright light again. Martha calmly leaves the room and is surrounded by the contestants asking her how it went. She replies that, unfortunately, she doesn't have the talent for willpower, despite all her training. Fred asks Martha in surprise why she wanted to be special. She replies that she failed. The loudspeaker announces the next test subject, Fred, who flies into the room begging himself not to become special. This time the power doesn't go out, and soon the test is over. Fred leaves the room and announces that he has passed the willpower test, which shocks Martha. The two fall to the floor, dejectedly contemplating unfulfilled wishes, and Carol tries to comfort them, saying they were just unlucky. The next test subject on the loudspeaker is Carol. Taking a deep breath, Carol confidently turns to her friends, letting them know it's her turn. She confidently walks into the room, starting the test by emitting red energy. Charlie notices that the stone on Carol's foot is glowing red while everyone else's stones are green. This tells him that Carol's ability level is rank 5. Carol successfully passes the test and comes out with obvious excitement on her face. Charlie asks what made her so tired, to which she replies that he will understand when he passes the test himself. Charlie suggests that Carol should motivate him properly and kisses her. She irritably waves him off, asking him to leave. A loudspeaker announces that the next test subject will be Charlie. He confidently heads for the door, waving to an indignant Carol. Carol changes her face and sincerely wishes Charlie good luck with the test. Upon entering the testing room, Charlie meets a man who asks if he has awakened his powers. Charlie confirms that he has. The man gives Charlie a bottle with some contents and asks for a drink. Then he clarifies again if Charlie has indeed awakened his abilities. The man is surprised, but says he won't answer any more questions and suggests they move on to the willpower test. Charlie is blindfolded, attaches a rock to his leg, and the test begins. The man encourages Charlie, telling him not to worry and to move forward toward his goal. He explains that since Charlie's abilities have already awakened, he will feel his consciousness separating from his body as he progresses. Once Charlie is prepared, the man pushes him forward with both hands with force. Charlie feels himself begin to fall into the void, gradually separating from his physical body. Soon his spiritual form is in a strange place, and Charlie notices that he can't feel his body at all. However, his physical body keeps repeating all his movements, thanks to some kind of connection. Charlie decides to have some fun, forgetting that his physical body is copying his every action in the real world. A man warns Charlie to stop jumping or the test will be interrupted. Charlie decides to act more seriously. Seeing the crystal in the spiritual world, Charlie begins to move quickly towards it through the water, believing that the test is too easy. However, after a few steps, the water begins to engulf him, his body becomes heavy, and it becomes harder to breathe. Charlie throws himself into the water and feels an otherworldly influence. Charlie feels overwhelmed by feelings of despair, sadness, and anger, trying to swallow him whole. However, he finds the strength to resist and swims to the surface. But the ordeal doesn't end. He hears his Uncle Lee's voice behind him. Uncle Lee tells Charlie that he is not special and will only hurt others if he continues the ordeal. Charlie realizes that his uncle is only an illusion created to thwart him and rushes to the crystal. The uncle's illusion teleports in front of him and declares that Charlie is not capable enough. It states that the mountains and rivers are destroyed, others are rampaging, and suggests that Charlie live a happy life, avoiding pointless fighting. Illusion declares that being special is not strength, but inflexibility. She shows Charlie a huge creature materializing right in front of him. The illusory patrolmen approach the monster, and Illusion asks if he can follow their lead. The monster begins to destroy the illusory cities, turning them to dust before Charlie's eyes. The bodies of dead patrol soldiers fly into the air and fall like rain at Charlie's feet. Illusion says that this is the end for everyone special and asks if Charlie really wants to be the same. She approaches Charlie and states that he just wants to be the center of attention. Illusion adds that countless teenagers dream of being superheroes. Illusion considers all of these to be infantile dreams, the desire to live in pleasure and get whatever you want. She begins to taunt Charlie, recounting his childhood dreams as a manifestation of youthful maximalism. Illusion. Uncle argues that the dark side of the world is not limited to the shadow layer, and then Lin Mo appears in front of Charlie with a torch. Illusion adds that even under the bright sun, there is always something you can't see. She states that the life of a special person is not a fairy tale, and with those words, Lin Mo's image disappears. Ghost Uncle Lee warns that becoming special means facing the consequences of one's decisions. Shadow returns to the main question and asks Charlie again if he can become special. In the physical world, Charlie's body stops, and the Night Watch staff tensely watches the test. A woman at the post asks a colleague about the progress of the test. The man replies that nothing is happening yet. Charlie is just wandering around with no clear purpose. The woman says it's normal that not everyone can take Charlie's test, but the man adds that only people with high stamina can progress further. He remarks that Charlie's goals are still unknown. After a few seconds, the woman informs the man in shock that the crystal on Charlie's leg has turned red. The man is puzzled. This can't be, since Charlie doesn't look like he has rank 5 abilities. The woman asks if Charlie can be rank 6. The man replies that only a few have reached that level in decades. The man continues to monitor the test and notices that the light in the crystal is beginning to dim. He asks the woman to check her watch for malfunctions, but all of Charlie's vitals are fine. The man realizes that the subject's willpower should increase as he approaches the crystal, and is surprised. He notes that Charlie's willpower is weakening, which alarms him. After a few seconds, Charlie approaches the crystal and tries to touch it. The man is amazed and wonders if this is a joke, because even a man with 6th rank willpower would not be able to touch the crystal. At this time in the spirit world, Uncle Lee's illusion tells Charlie not to become special. It warns of a possible threat to him and his friends because of his decisions. The illusion also shows Carol, the person dearest to Charlie, to think of her. Charlie touches the illusion, but quickly pulls himself together and says that Uncle Lee has already said enough. He asks the projection to stop talking and not to tempt him. The protagonist admits that the illusion surprised him at first and he thought about what she said. He says that he wanted to be a hero in the eyes of others and didn't think about the consequences. However, he says that there are no superhumans in this world. There are only ordinary people who succeed. He adds that it is their dedication to work that brings stability to the world. The protagonist remembers how he already enjoyed peace and takes the torch away from Lin Mo's newly reappeared illusion. He declares that he no longer wants to hide behind the backs of others and illuminates the area with a bright light. He wants to light his own flame and illuminate the darkness around him. Meanwhile, Uncle Lou listens to a report from an employee who reports problems with the shadow layer on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors of the mall. He says about 850 people were trapped in the shadow layer. 700 remain trapped and more than 650 were rescued, but the search continues. Uncle Lou asks a colleague about the pollution department's response. The latter replies that he has already sent the examination results. The officer adds that the pollution department has found several traveling spirits, very similar in bone and tissue morphology. He also informs that traces of human products have been found at the scene. Another employee objects that this is impossible because each spirit has its own individual characteristics, and they change greatly when mutated. Uncle Lou smokes and walks to the window, saying that something strange seems to be happening in the city. He says that some of the creatures lurking in the darkness can no longer stay put. Uncle Lou's attention is caught by a bright flash of light from the test case. He rushes to check what happened, making his way through the crowd of gawkers. Uncle Lou notes that the color orange is the ultimate test of willpower, but the color gold was never discussed. Running into the testing room, he finds 2 Night Watch officers and tries to figure out what happened. Looking closer, Uncle Lou sees Charlie walk up to the crystal and touch it, emitting a golden light. Back in his physical body, Charlie notices a huge crowd of surprised onlookers. After a while, Uncle Lau approaches Charlie in the break room and holds out a bottle of water to him. Uncle Lou says that Charlie surprised him by creating a golden light. Charlie, quickly becoming arrogant, asks if his golden light is legendary and if it surpasses rank 6 abilities. Uncle Lou replies that he can't say for sure, but studying such people is within his power. Charlie nervously asks Uncle Lou not to scare him, but he assures him that there is nothing to be afraid of. He says that Charlie will definitely be studied, and information about him has already been sent to the think tank. Charlie asks Uncle Lou if he really caused them so much trouble. Uncle Lou replies that it's okay, and that he will be with him, adding that Charlie only needs to undergo a few procedures. Later, Charlie walks into a room where the officers on duty and Uncle Lou wonder what he does in his spare time. The other test subjects watch the camera footage in amazement and say they can't believe an ordinary person like Charlie turned out to be the best. A group of unknowns also watch the tape with interest and say that something great is in store for us. As they continue to answer questions, Charlie tells them that during his ordeal in the illusory world, he struggled with himself, not understanding why he was here. Uncle Lou asks what he thought when he saw them, and Charlie replies that he was very excited and thought he was going to be special. He adds that he felt responsible but interrupts the story. Uncle Lou asks him to continue, but Charlie is distracted by the map hanging on the wall. Charlie says that only 5 of the 10 places survived, and emphasizes that the situation is complicated and they need to find out the truth. Uncle Lou is puzzled and wonders what Charlie is trying to say with his gestures. Charlie begins to tell how he saw people getting hot and cold and how he struggled to light the torch. He concludes by saying that after the torch failed, he became the only source of light. Uncle Lou shares with his coworkers that Charlie sometimes likes to exaggerate. To his surprise, his coworkers admit that they thought Charlie's story would be touching. They add that they are sure Charlie has a bright future ahead of him in Night Watch, and now understand why he created the golden light. The colleagues conclude that Charlie is incredibly talented, and the other test subjects watching the broadcast realize that they are not his equal. Charlie mentally hopes that he will be released home soon, as he wants to go for a massage. Uncle Lou informs Charlie that he can go and adds that notices will be sent to him. Charlie asks what kind of pressure he should be under, and Uncle Lou replies that he will be invited to a special training camp. Uncle Lou also reminds Charlie to keep his nose clean, adding that everyone on the Night Watch knows about him now. He says he doesn't know how to tell Uncle Lee, who wouldn't want Charlie to be special, and suggests that he might start to get angry. He sums it up and says that Charlie can go home since nothing can change anymore, and asks him to remember to come to the training camp on March 25th. Uncle Lou adds that people like Charlie will receive special training for a few months and then take a martial arts final exam. Finally, he asks Charlie not to mention the incident to Carol and bids him farewell. After some time in the shadow layer, Charlie remembers his words and realizes that he has 20 days to live. He realizes that the next toll on his life will begin in a few months, and decides to hunt to extend his days. That's when he notices someone in poor health running from something. Charlie sees this as a great opportunity and activates shadow walking, allowing him to move on any surface. He runs down a steep wall. Upon approaching the monster, Charlie tags it, activates the chase effect, and decapitates it. Charlie consumes the body of the defeated monster and increases his remaining life by 2 days. He thanks fate for spotting this chance in time and rejoices at how easily he realized it. Suddenly, someone calls Charlie's name, and he turns around in surprise, not expecting to hear a human voice in the shadow layer. A man in a motorcycle outfit stands in front of him and asks where his friend is. Charlie begins to question him and realizes that he has gotten carried away in the process, leaving only a pile of bones from his prey. The man is outraged, calls Charlie a thief, and declares that he will pay for his crimes. Angry, the man demands that Charlie admit that he stole what was his. The man lunges at Charlie, but suddenly slows down abruptly, stopping right in front of his face. He removes his blindfold and helmet, carefully stepping around Charlie and scrutinizing him. After a few seconds, the man exclaims that he knows Charlie, calling him by his nickname Yao, and admits that he has watched all of his shows and is a big fan. The man hugs Charlie, pulls out his phone for selfies, and asks him to smile, reminding him that booty must be shared according to the rules. Charlie wonders what those rules are and who made them up. In response, the man starts recording video, shouting that Charlie stole the loot from a harmless collector and didn't even apologize. To stop the flow of misinformation, Charlie uses his shadow net skill and pulls the man to him. Grabbing him by the head, he demands a normal explanation, not circus tricks. The man, rubbing his bruised spot, promises to tell everything. He says that they are freelance members of the Night's Watch, and adds that once Charlie reaches the first rank of mid-level, he can join them. Charlie asks interestedly what freelancers do. The man admits that they earn between 6,000 and 7,000 yuan. Charlie, who has never seen that kind of money, is surprised and asks why the man thinks that is a small salary. He asks the man to show respect, explaining that Charlie himself receives much less than this amount. The man replies that he understands Charlie's outrage, but their paychecks are justified by the fact that they only count on themselves and could die at any moment. He adds that the monster Charlie killed was just a straggler from the pack. The man begins to collect the remains of another monster, and Charlie wonders who he's selling them to. The man replies that he sells them to the Night's Watch, universities, and companies with suitable qualifications. The man explains that they are given assignments to catch certain types of monsters and given information about their locations. Charlie is impressed and asks the man to share his QR code. He promises to come back, add it, and add 7,000 yuan for another monster. The man replies that 4,900 yuan for the information is enough for him. Charlie gives him a hug and says he can't afford to trifle with his new friend. He also adds that he would like to discuss their future cooperation. A short time later, Charlie finds his next victim, a shadow cat. He catches it off guard and lifts its clawed body with shadow bite. Charlie decides to devour the monster, leaving the body intact for sale. After successfully completing the task, he signals his new business partner, letting him know that he can pick up the remains. Charlie's friend says he is incredibly kind, willing to share such booty, and happily calls him brother. Charlie replies that his friend's job is also important. They need to locate and deliver the body to the Night's Watch. The man says that the job can be done alone if he registers. Charlie replies that he prefers to keep his identity private, fearing repercussions if his identity becomes known to the Night's Watch. The man says that Charlie has killed 4 more in one day, setting a record. Charlie replies that he could kill 100 if he had time. In his mind, however, he realizes that the monsters he has devoured have not strengthened him, and thinks that rank 1 monsters would be more suitable prey. He decides to ask his partner Daniel for help in finding such monsters. Daniel replies that the task is almost impossible due to the difficulty. He explains that monsters of the first rank are extremely dangerous and the risk is too high. Charlie recognizes the danger, but decides that he will deal with them anyway. Back home and glad to finally be in his own place, Charlie suddenly hears Carol's voice. Looking over, he sees her lying on the couch looking at her phone, letting him know she's been waiting a long time for him. Charlie takes a cookie out of the refrigerator, sits down next to her, and asks where Uncle Lou is. Carol informs her that Uncle Lou is on a mission right now. When Charlie asks if he'll be back today, she answers in the negative and wonders why he cares. Charlie says with a satisfied smile that Carol can stay with him for the night. Carol, as usual, slaps him on the wrist and asks how the test went. Charlie, a little upset, replies that the test went well and asks why Carol is interested. Carol wonders about his ability level. Charlie hesitantly says he is level 3, deciding not to reveal the whole truth. Carol moves closer and asks about his abilities. Charlie replies that his class is Shadow. Carol says he has a lot of potential, but since his ability is auxiliary, there's no need to worry. Charlie wonders why Carol waited so long for him and asks about her abilities. Carol cheerfully replies that her class is Spirit and adds that this class has the highest potential. She adds that in the early stages the abilities aren't as strong, but later become powerful. Carol has clearly come to brag in front of Charlie. Charlie decides to cool her ardor a bit and gently pats Carol on the nose, telling her not to mince words. Carol keeps up and also pinches Charlie on the nose, moving closer again. They pull away from each other and Charlie informs Carol that they are now Shadow Man and Soul Keeper. Carol admits that she doesn't quite understand this classification herself, but knows that others have the same names. She adds that Charlie's shadow corresponds to the shadow of the other, and her Soul Keeper corresponds to the spirit of the other. Carol says that they need to hunt others, avoiding infection to become stronger. She adds that hunting new and suitable increases developmental efficiency. Charlie admires Carol's skills and asks her to demonstrate her abilities. Carol replies that there are no others here, but Charlie assures her that she can test her skills on him, assuring her that everything will be fine. Finally, Carol agrees and uses her power, knocking Charlie to the ground instantly. Frightened, Carol sits down next to Charlie and asks if he's okay. Charlie quickly puts his head in her lap and asks her to pet him. Carol, surprised, starts stroking his head, not suspecting a trick. Charlie tells Carol that she is very strong, admitting that he was ready to defend himself but got caught anyway. Carol replies that their strength comes from others, so it's okay that he didn't resist. Charlie asks Carol if she thinks they will be a target for everyone at the training camp. Carol replies that she likes the intensity and assumes there will be strong students from the neighborhood there. Charlie wonders about the levels of students at the camp and reassures her that it is unlikely that anyone will be significantly stronger than them. Suddenly, Carol changes the subject and asks how much Charlie is willing to pay a masseuse, remembering his love of massages. Charlie tells Carol that he is willing to pay the masseuse several thousand yen. Carol is not happy about this and jealously chastises him. Later, Charlie goes hunting in the shadow layer again and sees a large monster devouring its kin. Charlie asks Daniel if this monster is a rank 1. Daniel confirms that it is one that Charlie has already fought. Charlie prepares to attack and Daniel asks if he needs help. Charlie replies that he can handle it himself. Before Daniel can do anything, a rock falls on the monster's head, knocking him down. After destroying the monster with a single blow, Charlie is notified that his shadow thread skill has improved. He can now release multiple threads at once. Daniel, amazed, watches Charlie's power with his mouth open. Meanwhile, in an unknown location, the man is surrounded by many others and flies into the air, entangling himself in lightning bolts. After accumulating enough charge, he delivers a powerful strike, wiping out an entire group in one blow. Carol watches the video of the fight on her laptop and is amazed at its power. She marvels at the battle, calling it incredible. Uncle Lou approaches and admits that not everyone can awaken such abilities and says he's impressed too. Uncle Lou mentions that there was previously a man with a similar ability and points to a flash drive with a recording of her early development. Carol wonders if he has achieved such power, but he replies that he hasn't, clarifying that Uncle Lou achieved the same thing. She wonders why Uncle Lou is sharing this information, since it could be useful to Charlie. In his apartment, Uncle Lee watches the sunset, immersed in memories. He recalls the disaster when a body was discovered, surrounded by a light that infected anyone who looked at it for too long. 2 divisions were destroyed in battle with the creature. 3 generals and 300 members of the Night's Watch were injured. The survivors were taken away and their cases classified, giving the mysterious creature the code name God. Meanwhile, Charlie continues his hunt in the Shadow Layer, discovering a new target. He makes an unsuccessful attack, and an opponent hits him hard in the face, knocking him to the ground. Seeing that his health has dropped to 66%, Charlie decides to change tactics. The monster promptly lunges at him with its claws. At the critical moment, Charlie stands up and with a satisfied look pulls out a stick-shaped cookie, taking a bite out of a piece. A second later, the monster explodes, flying to pieces at Charlie's feet. Charlie uses his skill, dealing extra damage as it penetrates the enemy's body. Daniel, who was filming the fight, approaches Charlie and says that the explosive part of the video will create the biggest furor. Charlie compliments Daniel on his excellent camera work and begins to put his skills to the test, while Daniel collects the monster's remains. Reviewing his profile, Charlie notices that his lifespan has increased to 47 days, happy that he no longer has to worry about training camp. Charlie asks Daniel to prepare the next opponent, and he replies that everything is almost ready. At that moment, a projectile filled with otherworldly energy flies into the heroes. Charlie reacts instantly, pulling Daniel aside and looking around for the enemy. A huge other appears in front of them, a giant eye with tentacles. Charlie senses a familiar power in the creature, remembering her lover saying that her guardian corresponds to the spirit of the other. Charlie rushes to attack, realizing that his only chance is to quickly neutralize the monster before it can attack again. But before Charlie can reach the monster, a golden spear pierces it, killing it on the spot. A few seconds later, the spear wielder in fancy armor appears in the place of the defeated monster. The man says nothing, flies into the air and leaves only a small pamphlet behind. Charlie reads the brochure and learns about a group called Haiyan that helps people become special and stand out. Soon, Charlie finds himself outside of Haiyan's office, which is a huge skyscraper. Charlie studies the skyscraper and the huge statue next to it, remembering Daniel's words. The man said that Haiyan is the largest pharmaceutical company in the city. Daniel adds that working at Haiyan guarantees a stable future and no worries. Charlie asks Daniel if the spirit killer was a Haiyan employee. Daniel confirms this by noting the distinctive shape. Charlie is amazed at how easily he handled his second-ranked opponent. Daniel explains that Haiyan is doping the staff to enhance their abilities. He adds that Haiyan is working with the Night's Watch to improve the designs. According to him, Haiyan is the best way to get stronger quickly. Charlie asks if Daniel wants to become one, to which he replies that he's never thought about it. At this point, a staff member introduces a new product, the drug T1928. She says that it was developed by a doctor from Beidou and Mr. X, who has been the head of the company for 10 years. The colleague claims that the drug improves brain activity, and Charlie thinks, it sounds tempting, but does it really work? After the story, the coworker announces that a volunteer from the crowd is needed. At that moment, Daniel jumps out and yells that he's ready to help. Charlie is stunned to see Daniel, who tricked him into agreeing, drink a bottle of the drug. Daniel's eyes begin to glow and he screams that his brain has become much more powerful. The employee informs him that the original price of the drug is 8,000 yen, but there is a promotion today, and the price has been reduced to 1,800 yen. The crowd is shocked by the test results and rushes toward the employee. Charlie, seeing this, turns away and walks away, thinking there is no way to help them. He enters the Haiyan gallery and stops at a painting of company founder Stan Haiyan. Charlie is surprised to learn that Haiyan not only founded the company, but was also a member of the Night's Watch. Night's Watch Commander Murphy approaches him and confirms this, adding that few people remember it now. Charlie recognizes Murphy and realizes that he saw him during the attack on the mall. Murphy reveals that in the 50th year of the disaster, Stan Haiyan led the evacuation of the occupied area. According to Murphy, Stan did not hesitate to set himself on fire in order to destroy everyone else and protect the people. However, as a result of this courageous decision, Stan Haiyan burned to the ground, leaving not even bones. Murphy adds that his descendants raised Haiyan and continue to contribute greatly to the business. Murphy tells Charlie that the man reminds him a lot of Stan Haiyan. Charlie doesn't understand why he reminds Murphy of Stan and recalls his words about wanting to be a light in the darkness. He realizes that he said them without much meaning. Murphy surprises Charlie by saying that he is worthy of being related to General Lee. Charlie wonders which general he is referring to, and Murphy confidently calls the general his uncle. Charlie is shocked, remembering how strange his uncle sometimes acted and trying to realize that he was one of the strongest soldiers of the Night's Watch. Murphy asks if his uncle ever talked about his position, to which Charlie confesses that he always thought his uncle was just a laborer. Charlie realizes that his uncle's words about another way out don't seem strange anymore. Murphy assumes that General Lee is watching Charlie for his benefit and introduces himself as an instructor at the training camp. He wishes Charlie luck and hopes that the training will be a success. After Murphy leaves, Charlie feels a great deal of anxiety. He looks at the painting and notices otherworldly forces emanating from it. Suddenly, a huge worm flies out of the frame. Charlie realizes it is a wandering spirit and begins to chase him. As he climbs the stairs, he tries to figure out how the spirit got in with such good security. Instinct tells Charlie that this spirit is not as simple as it seems. Charlie continues his pursuit, assuming that the appearance of the other spirits is connected to something important. Charlie realizes that he is in the basement of the company, but the lack of personnel alarms him. Suddenly, he hears someone's voice and decides to hide in the shadow layer to find out what is going on. Charlie activates the shadow pupil skill and quickly passes into the otherworldly layer. Once on the other side, he finds himself in a strange laboratory with many capsules. After examining them, Charlie notices that among the capsules are creatures of different sizes and ranks. Meanwhile, 2 scientists are walking down the corridor. The assistant informs the doctor that the cultivation of the wandering spirit is going according to plan, and adds that Mr. Stan would like to take control of the blood subspecies. The assistant asks the doctor if he has any ideas about this. The doctor replies that taming the others is quite difficult, mentioning that the 3 wandering spirits were an example of this. He adds that trying to capture the blood subspecies in the first place could result in significant losses. The assistant reports that the previous use of flesh and blood to attract the bloodborne species has yielded results. The doctor responds that they can't rely on that alone. The doctor emphasizes that their goal is to create a controllable other that can aid the Night's Watch. The first step is to take control of the spirit. He approaches one of the creatures and says that this spirit came to them after being rejected by their own. The doctor turns to the other creature, calling it number 9, and asks how it is doing. The assistant warns the doctor, but the doctor tells him not to worry and to just take notes. The doctor taps on the glass of the capsule and asks his interlocutor how he likes his new eyes. The other creature extends a clawed paw, partially penetrating the thick glass. The doctor is pleased with the behavior and notes that the other's mood is stabilizing. He adds that the next step will be to create additional copies that can fight the other. He asks an assistant to fetch some rocks and give them to number 9. Charlie, watching this, wonders if the other can see what's going on. Charlie notes that the creature is not like the traveling spirit he encountered earlier. It is not aggressive and is able to communicate. After observing number 9, Charlie realizes that the creature possesses consciousness. The assistant asks the doctor if the experiment will get out of hand, and if the same creatures will fight humans. The doctor calmly replies that he believes it will solve all the problems that have arisen. The assistant suggests further testing, such as replacing the alien soul with a human soul. The doctor reacts sharply, saying that this idea is unacceptable and out of bounds. Soon, however, the elderly doctor begins to cough violently, and the assistant apologizes because of his unfortunate suggestions. At the same second, the assistant plunges a knife into the scientist's chest, causing him to spurt blood in unbearable agony. The assistant announces that the doctor's research has come to an end. Taking off his glasses, he says, "That's not why he came here." He then raises his hand and concentrates a blob of otherworldly energy in it. With full concentration, he releases the energy, destroying all the capsules containing the others. The science complex's control system immediately warns of the creatures escaping from room 35, declaring a red threat level. An assistant, distorted by otherworldly energy, watches the fleeing staff. After a few seconds, he falls to the floor with a rattling sound and remains motionless. Charlie changes clothes and watches in amazement as the assistant kills his teacher and then commits suicide. Looking around, he notices that the doctor is still giving signs of life and decides to help him. As he approaches the dying doctor, Charlie asks him not to move, but he continues to talk about the fiery visage. Charlie tries to elicit details, but the doctor quickly bleeds out and dies before he can explain anything. Charlie shakes the doctor's body, asking him not to riddle, but becomes enraged when he is convinced he is dead. Turning around, Charlie notices something different and decides to exterminate all the monsters first. After looking around and making sure there are no more monsters in the room, Charlie summons the Shadow Claws and prepares to attack. After a second, he rushes into action, but another one knocks him down and hurls him into the wall. However, Charlie can't finish off the new monsters due to the interference of the other two. He temporarily retreats to straighten them out. After Charlie tackles the antagonists, he notices a huge number of dead employees and realizes that the others have gone to the outside world. Meanwhile, employee Hayan continues to present her pharmaceutical products. No sooner does the alarm go off than the unsuspecting girl is attacked by monsters from the ceiling. The girl dies on the spot, and other visitors panic and run away to escape the monsters. Daniel tries to calm the crowd, saying that people don't just attack for no reason, and urges them to stick together. He desperately pleads for people not to scatter, but no one pays any attention to him. While trying to save people, Daniel doesn't notice someone sneaking up behind him and attacking him. Charlie comes to the rescue and knocks out the otherworldly creature with one punch. Daniel is genuinely happy to help Charlie, but Charlie tells him to keep helping people. Daniel complains to Charlie that no one is listening to him because of the panic in the crowd. Charlie attacks another monster, saving a civilian from being killed at the last moment. Getting the crowd's attention, he yells and orders them not to panic and to avoid the monster's attacks. The crowd recognizes Charlie as Streamer Yu and begins to applaud, exclaiming that they are saved. Charlie orders the crowd to look around and report any oddities to him, adding that the children and women should come out first. After a while, as the crowd leaves the building, Charlie decides that his help is no longer needed. He tells Daniel to let the civilians leave the building and he himself will go to investigate. Meanwhile, a woman and her young daughter are trapped in a building nearby due to fire and destruction. Someone breaks through the rubble, and the woman shouts joyfully to her rescuer that they are here. However, from behind a smokescreen, a traveling spirit flies out at them, ready to devour them. At that moment, shadowy threads entangle the monster's jaws, stopping it under the force of the tension. Charlie pulls the threads towards himself, throwing the monster into the air and rendering it defenseless. Seizing the moment, Charlie leaps out of his ambush and with a swipe of his claws, pierces the creature through. The woman thanks Charlie in tears, clearing her throat from the smoke. Charlie tries to shake off the flames that have spread from the monster. Dealing with the situation, he approaches the woman and child, but the girl cries, saying that Charlie looks worse than the monster. Hugging the girl and her mother tightly, Charlie tells them not to be afraid and to hold on to him tightly. Charlie uses a shadow thread to hook onto a building and jumps outside looking for a place to drop off civilians. After a minute, he spots a place where firefighters and rescue workers have arrived and decides to land there. The mother and daughter thank Charlie once again for the rescue, and onlookers film the incident on their phones, saying that Streamer Yo saved a woman and a child. Charlie enjoys the shade and applause from the people he and Daniel saved. Mentally, he notices that the shadow glasses are wearing out fast and hopes that the Night Watch will get here soon. A few minutes later, Charlie notices that the Night's Watch has already arrived, and he has a suspicion that this was all planned. At this time, a group of monsters surround Night Watch Commander Murphy and prepare to attack. However, Murphy uses his skill to destroy the otherworldly creatures by splitting the flames into multiple beams. Heiran Tower begins to crack at the seams and loud explosions erupt on various floors. Charlie realizes that the Hai'an industrial area is the main target of the attack and decides to see if there are any survivors. Realizing that the Night's Watch isn't here, he realizes that he'll have to rely only on himself and checks his vitals. After a while, Charlie gets to the survivors and begins to take them down using his shadow thread skills. He tries his best to save as many people as possible, spending his last bit of energy. Soon, Charlie spots Commander Murphy of the Night Watch. After evacuating the last civilian, Charlie lands tiredly on the ground and exhales. He falls to the ground, realizing that he is so tired he can barely get up, recognizing that being a hero is very difficult. However, looking at the civilians rejoicing at being rescued, Charlie realizes that it was worth it. Suddenly, one of the grandmothers loudly asks if anyone has seen her granddaughter. The other rescued people also begin to panic, looking for their children and claiming they are missing. Charlie says he hasn't seen anyone, and is surprised that all the missing people are children. Looking up, he notices that some creatures are taking the children away in an unknown direction. Mentally, he wonders why these creatures suddenly want children, and what they might be doing with them. His thoughts are interrupted by a sudden phone call from Carol. Picking up the phone, he asks what's wrong. Carol asks in response if he is in Heian's company. Charlie is surprised and asks how she knows. Carol tells him not to ask and to just go home. Charlie replies when she finishes making the beef, tomato salad, and egg soup. Carol tries to say something, but he hangs up, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Realizing that he has little blood and shadow points left, Charlie decides to hurry up. As he walks up, he sees Uncle Lou and several Night's Watch soldiers who order him to stay put. Uncle Lou states that according to Law 113, non-members of the Night's Watch are not allowed to use their powers in public. He demands that Charlie stop or action will be taken. Charlie raises his hands, mentally deciding to leave everything to the Night's Watch. They are more qualified and will be able to help. He turns his head and hears the cries of an old woman still searching for her granddaughter. Realizing that every second counts, Charlie turns to the Night's Watchman and asks them to follow him. With those words, he uses a shadow thread and flies into the air, heading after the child kidnappers. One of the fighters prepares to shoot Charlie, but Uncle Lou gestures him to stop and asks him to watch. Meanwhile, the kidnappers continue to take the children away in an unknown direction. Charlie tries to follow them and notices that they are entering the shadow layer. Diving after them to the other side, he continues to follow the monsters that are swarming around. Charlie realizes that the situation is getting worse. The monsters are now kidnapping people instead of killing them. He realizes that there is a connection between Haiyan's company, the biological experiments of the fire species, and the organized behavior of others. Charlie realizes he is in a terrible situation, but it is too late to back out. Soon, one of the monsters guarding the children is distracted by the sound of a pebble bouncing off the walls. The monster thinks the children are playing, but the repeated throwing of the pebble catches his attention. Enraged, the monster notices that there are fewer children. The monsters begin to panic and discover Charlie, who has been trying to evacuate the children by distracting them with rocks. Charlie realizes that his plan has failed and he has been spotted. The enraged creatures attack Charlie, who quickly devises a new plan. He uses shadow threads to entangle the monsters in a strong net. The monsters, unable to break through, begin to growl and try in vain to chew through the net. Dodging the chase, Charlie leads the children, lighting the way with a flashlight. When he reaches a safe place, he dials the number of the Night Watch to relay an important message. Suddenly, his phone explodes in his hands without warning. A man with snakeskin and eyes appears out of the darkness, declaring that Charlie can't count on the Night's Watch for help. He calls Charlie the famous brother Yo, adding that he knows a lot about him. Charlie protects the children and summons the ghostly claws, demanding answers from the stranger. The stranger, with an evil smile, centers the power in his finger and demands to guess his name. After a second, he unleashes that power, blasting the wall in a single motion. Charlie is amazed at the stranger's incredible abilities, realizing that he is unusual. Deciding that a fight is out of place, Charlie decides to lead his opponent away from the children. However, as he lands on the pavement, he hears iron rods flying into his back. The stranger comments that Charlie's reaction is the same as in the video, and adds that he is impressed. He considers Charlie's strength to be only entry level and expresses disappointment. Charlie asks the stranger if he works for the high-end corporation. The stranger grins arrogantly and asks if his appearance gives him away. Charlie realizes the man is mocking him and asks if he belongs to the fire species. The stranger replies that dead people aren't supposed to know much, and attacks with poison bubbles. Charlie dodges the attacks, but one bubble hits the target. There is a huge explosion, and Charlie is thrown several meters away. The stranger decides to finish Charlie off, releasing dozens more bubbles and causing a series of explosions. He admits his own disappointment, expecting more from the local superstar. The children watch from afar with the hope that Charlie survived. As the dust settles, a stranger approaches the craters and discovers Charlie is missing. Charlie steps out of the shadows and sneaks up on the stranger, preparing to neutralize him. The protagonist strikes with a shadow punch, but the stranger dodges, receiving only a light scratch on his face. Charlie continues to attack, stepping out of the shadows and surprising the enemy again. But the stranger anticipates the attack and dodges, releasing an acid sphere. Charlie disappears into the shadows again, and the stranger mockingly calls him a pathetic rat and launches another acid sphere. Charlie intercepts the sphere and reflects it into a neighboring building, causing a shadowy explosion. The stranger, lightly wounded by the blast, taunts Charlie, pointing out his stealth and sneaky techniques. He declares that he will fight by his own rules if Charlie doesn't come out for a fair fight. Creating a large acid sphere, he launches it in an unexpected direction, leaving Charlie stranded. Charlie realizes that the stranger has aimed the deadly sphere at the children watching the fight. At the last moment, he steps out of the shadows and takes the blow for himself, protecting the child. But before he can recover, the stranger appears behind him and declares that he has finally caught him. Charlie has no time to react, and the stranger delivers a crushing blow to his back. The force of the blow sends Charlie flying dozens of meters away, landing on bags of garbage. The stranger approaches and mockingly asks why Charlie was hoping to hide in the shadows, claiming he didn't stand a chance. He begins to rain down blows on the weakened Charlie, and he realizes that his shadow form is beginning to disintegrate. The stranger grabs Charlie's face and lifts him up. Charlie feels that because of his shattered shadow shell, he can't use his powers. The stranger breaks some of the shadow on Charlie's face and says it's time to find out who he really is. He decides to destroy Charlie, holds him by the throat with one hand, and with the other creates a poisonous sphere to rain down on the protagonist. When the stranger has almost finished concentrating the poison sphere, a brick suddenly falls. Looking up, he sees that the children, not sitting idly by, are pelting him with rocks, shouting for him to let Charlie go. The stranger angrily asks the children what they are doing, calling them boys. Distracted by the children, he decides to launch a poison sphere at them. Charlie takes advantage of the momentary respite, recovers his strength, and grabs the stranger from behind, demanding that he fight only him. While the stranger tries to fight back, Charlie uses the shadow pupil skill to protect the children. The stranger is stunned by the chaotic shadow attacks, and Charlie stabs him in the back, causing him to bounce back. The stranger turns around and declares to Charlie that the little girl won't help him now. Charlie says that his blood is under control and asks why kidnap children. The stranger explains that children's souls are purer, and advises Charlie to listen to his family. Charlie recalls the creatures from the lab and the mall, trying to make sense of his opponent's words. Suddenly, he notices other enemies surrounding him, and the stranger says it's time to die. The others attack Charlie at the same time, but he replies with a smile that the fun is just beginning. Using his enhanced shadow threads, Charlie entangles the enemies, thanking the stranger for the gift. Charlie begins to move quickly between enemies, using stalking and decapitation skills, devouring his victims. The stranger is stunned to see that Charlie is able to devour otherworldly beings. Feeding on his enemies, Charlie turns into a vortex, sucking in weak opponents. The stranger tries to stop the process by enveloping himself in energy and attacking the maelstrom, but to no avail. Angry, the stranger thinks the only thing he can do is use blood. Suddenly, a huge egg-like creature appears out of the shadowy maelstrom. Cursing Charlie, the stranger tries to escape the sphere as quickly as possible. The stranger admits to himself that this is the first time he has ever seen someone devour another, and wonders if that makes him the same monster. He doesn't manage to get far, and a dark vortex appears in front of him. The otherworldly energy dissipates, and Charlie, fully restored to his shadow form, appears before him. In addition to regeneration, Charlie can now create shadow swords. Charlie feels that he has gotten rid of everything bad and released his powers. He notices that heaven and earth are brighter and the world is filled with new colors. Charlie looks at the stranger and feels an unbearably strong fear emanating from him. With thoughts of wanting to play with his victim, Charlie disappears, leaving only a cloud of mist. The stranger mentally notes that Charlie is completely immersed in the world and cannot be found. In desperation, he shouts to Charlie that he is ready to fight and calls for help. But in a matter of moments, all of his minions are cut down by dark swords. The stranger feels a terrible cutting pain in his chest. Panicking, he thinks he can't see Charlie's attacks because of his speed and wonders how a second-ranked man can be so strong. Charlie, now able to hide in the deep shadows, quietly sneaks up on the stranger and notices that his face betrays all emotion and fear. He continues to strike his opponent, enjoying the torture process. Charlie realizes that he is taking great pleasure in playing with his victim. The stranger yells at Charlie to kill him instead of continuing to abuse him. Charlie appears behind the stranger, puts a sword to his throat, and says he will grant his wish. He brings the sword closer, and the stranger realizes that his fate is sealed and he won't be able to get out. At that moment, someone throws a piece of tile, distracting Charlie and allowing the stranger to escape. Another stranger enters the arena, calling the first one Charlie Jones and asking what he's doing here. He adds that they have been expected for half a day and emphasizes that the boss is greatly displeased. Jones is surprised to see his comrade Sailor and asks if the boss sent him here. Sailor replies that their plan starts now, orders Jones to take the kids, and says he'll handle the rest himself. Jones agrees and walks off down the block, leaving Charlie with Sailor. Charlie dives into the shadows and jumps out next to Jones, yelling at him to leave the kids alone and swinging his swords. Charlie doesn't have time to attack before Sailor knocks him down. He quickly gets up and lunges at Sailor, charging his fist with otherworldly energy. Sailor attacks, but Charlie deftly dodges and leaps aside. Meanwhile, Jones concentrates his power in one finger. Jones binds Charlie with poisoned ropes, rendering him unable to move or attack. Sailor uses the moment to deliver a powerful blow charged with otherworldly energy. Jones screams at Sailor to finish Charlie off, but suddenly a hail of blows descends on him, dismembering his body. Before Jones can realize what has happened, he falls to the ground dead, blood continuously flowing from his severed limbs. Sailor looks coldly at Jones's body and praises Charlie's skills, asking if he's working the night watch. He wonders why Charlie is meddling in their affairs. Charlie replies that Sailor is using the children for experiments, which he finds unacceptable. Sailor says that Charlie has decided to play the hero. Charlie replies that he doesn't aspire to be a hero. He just sticks to his principles. He adds that he is ready for battle because he is acting on his conscience. Sailor mockingly replies that if Charlie saves the children, humanity will be destroyed. Charlie doesn't understand how kidnapping children can save the world and asks Sailor about it. Sailor explains that the war between humans and other creatures has been going on for hundreds of years. In his opinion, only the efforts of his group are keeping humanity alive. Sailor believes that the other beings are much stronger than humans, and the power of humans is like a fire that cannot light the whole world. Sailor says that they have found another way to escape an agonizing death. He believes the darkness is invincible, so they need to adapt, bury their hopes, and just wait. He assures them that a conflagration will soon start that will save humanity, and that is what they are waiting for. Charlie mockingly replies that Sailor justifies his actions with fairy tales. He adds that if the fire species think the same way, they will all be destroyed. Sailor says that talking to Charlie has gotten boring and begins to glow with unusual energy. After a few seconds, fire ignites in his chest, and he offers Charlie a glimpse of the power of the fire vision. Charlie rushes into the fray, clutching his two swords and preparing for a powerful two-handed attack. Sailor easily blocks the blow without taking damage using his hand. Attempting to knock Charlie down, Sailor delivers a strong kick with his foot, throwing him back a bit. Charlie backs away, analyzing his opponent and looking for the right moment to strike. Despite trying to attack from different directions, Sailor always successfully blocks the blows. However, during one of the attacks, Sailor finds Charlie's mistake and blasts the ground beneath him using his power. The smoke clears, and in the center of the crater lies a badly mangled Charlie. He puts his hand to his wound, recognizing that Sailor is a formidable opponent. Charlie notices that his wounds are not healing despite his shadow form. Sailor approaches him and explains that he used a special skill, Fire Strike. He adds that Charlie couldn't defeat it and will be helpless against absolute power. Sailor says it's time to finish with Charlie, but he smiles and applies the tag skill. The tag causes Sailor to be terrified and he freezes, unable to move. Waves of fear engulf him. He wonders how he got here and begs not to die. Charlie appears behind Sailor, saying that he feels the fear lurking in his heart. Charlie adds that saving humanity is only an excuse, and the real reason for his actions is fear. He prepares for the final attack by crossing his two swords into one, and declares that the entire fireweed is just a group of thugs. Sailor gathers his will and overcomes his fear, turning around and lunging at Charlie. But he doesn't make it in time, and Charlie stabs him with his shadow sword. Sailor manages to release a jet of flame into Charlie's face and sees only the boy in front of him. He falls to the ground and mentally notes Charlie's fearlessness, remembering how he himself was just as energetic at his age. In his dying thoughts, he realizes that his ignorance and fearlessness have long since dissipated, and that Charlie will suffer the same fate. Charlie tries to question Sailor, but he gives up the ghost without uttering a word. Meanwhile, a reporter arrives at the scene of the fire and reveals that the Haiyan Company building is behind her. She reveals that there was a fire an hour ago, and the building completely burned down, but a few people managed to escape. The reporter adds that many victims managed to escape thanks to a streamer with the nickname You. She continues that the streamer rushed to rescue children who were kidnapped by others. Suddenly, a bystander notices a group of kidnapped children and Charlie's silhouette next to them, shouting that Brother E is back. The crowd begins to praise Charlie, shouting his nickname loudly and heading towards him. Charlie sits down with the rescued children, tells them they can go on, and adds that he will not go with them himself. The children happily hug Charlie, call him brother, and return to their parents. A while later, Charlie, exhausted after the fighting, returns home. He doesn't immediately notice Carol sobbing on the couch. As he gets closer, he sees that his beloved is pale and can't stop her tears. Charlie apologizes for being late and starts talking nonsense about how he was held up again on his way back from the store. Carol continues to cry and accuses Charlie of thinking she's a child if he thinks she'll believe his excuses. Charlie asks Carol if she was afraid he was going to die. Carol gets up from the couch, hysterically screaming that he'd rather be dead, and swings for a punch. Charlie gently raises his hand and gently stops her. Carol demands that he let her go, but he refuses, pulling her to him and hugging her. Gently stroking her cheek, Charlie asks if she's tried this before. Carol doesn't understand and asks what he means. Charlie reassures her by telling her that there is nothing to be afraid of since they are no longer children. Carol sincerely admits that she doesn't know what he is talking about. Charlie continues to insist, admitting that he's never tried it either, and offers to fix that. Carol asks Charlie to be more specific, but he interrupts her by gently approaching her and kissing her. After a second, Carol comes to her senses and pushes Charlie away, asking what he's doing. Charlie, unafraid, continues his nonsense, claiming that he was very thirsty, which is why he did what he did. Carol covers her lips with her hand, looking at him shyly and asking what he means. Charlie dodges the question and asks if she's hungry, offering to heat up some food. Walking over to the microwave, Charlie mentally admits that he was just on the verge of life and death, but he feels it was worth it because the thrill of kissing his lover was incredible. His mood immediately improves and he says it was the best reward for the fight of his life. Carol shyly watches Charlie dance enthusiastically and calls him a fool to herself. Soon they sit down at the table and begin to eat dinner, exchanging glances. Charlie decides to check how much his abilities have grown since the fight and opens his profile. A new ability called Hidden Shadow appears in his account, allowing him to dive into shadows and move freely between them. After studying the description of the ability, Charlie realizes that it is a modified shadow form skill. He notices that he can see people's auras: red, enemy, green, ally, white, civilian. Suddenly he focuses on Carol, confusing her. She asks what he wants and warns him not to do anything weird. Charlie continues to stare at her, pondering the significance of the pink aura around his lover. He assumes that the pink aura means Carol's feelings for him, and smiles. Suddenly, dinner is interrupted by loud fireworks in front of the house. The couple walks out onto the balcony, mesmerized by the bright flashes in the sky. Charlie breaks the silence by asking Carol about Fireview. Carol stares intently at Charlie and asks how he knew that. Without waiting for an answer, she adds that such details were mentioned in her father's notes. Carol explains that Fireview is an independent group looking out only for their own interests. Carol warns Charlie that the organization is brainwashed and advises her not to contact it. She adds that there is a reward of 500,000 yuan for information about them. Charlie looks shocked and disappointed as if he realized the loss of 1,000,000 yuan. Carol asks what's bothering him. Charlie says that everything is fine, although he feels bad about losing the money. He wonders if there are other such organizations and what the rewards are. Carol says she doesn't know. Charlie says he's just looking for ways to make money. Carol mentions that there are rewards for information on other organizations, but Enlightenment stands out. Charlie inquires, and Carol explains that Enlightenment is an ally of the Night's Watch, but differs in that it believes in the defeat of humanity. She adds that the organization is looking for a way to escape. including the idea of moving to another planet. Charlie remarks that it reminds him of a science fiction movie, adding that spaceships aren't for everyone. Carol replies that you can't rely on technology alone for that. She says that others live in a world without technology but aspire to get into ours. If the Enlightenment achieves the same results, it will be hard to stop the spinning wheel. Charlie reflects that the vacations are over and people are back to business. He remembers that with the increase in rank, he easily exterminates others and has extended his life. However, the days go by and it is time to pack. On the eve of departure, Uncle Lee returns and tells Charlie that his abilities have impressed him. Charlie wonders where Uncle Lee has been and what happened to his arm. Uncle Lee reassures that everything is fine and adds that he has a lot of work this year and hardly any free time. He also mentions that Charlie got something else besides the golden light. The protagonist tries to ask his uncle about his powers, but the uncle is evasive. Uncle Lee realizes why Charlie seemed unusual to him. He failed the tests, but ended up on the 6th level. However, he still doubts that Charlie can become special. Charlie tells his uncle that he met Murphy, who said his uncle was a general. He asks Uncle Lee if this is true, and he reluctantly confirms. Charlie excitedly informs his uncle that he is one of the top 5 strongest. Uncle Lee says it's all in the past. When he left the front, he was about 40 years old. He recalls his youth when he was full of energy and fought countless enemies. He continues that his goals were simple, to exterminate everyone for safety. But it took him more than 20 years. His uncle relates that his wife died from defiling those around him, and he had to change activities. He notes that there are strong rivals in Beidou now, but Charlie assures him that he will never give up and can handle all the challenges. Charlie says that he also wants to become a general like his uncle. Uncle Lee adds that now that he's been spotted, there's no turning back. He pulls a necklace out of his pocket and asks Charlie to put it on himself. Charlie asks about the pendant, and Uncle replies that it's a secret item that will allow him to hear many new sounds. The uncle adds that the pendant strengthens willpower but increases negative emotions. It must be worn 3 days apart. He explains that the pendant can be activated when unusual energy is detected to quickly increase combat power, but only once. Charlie examines the pendant and asks if it is connected to the shadow layer. Uncle Lee praises Charlie's knowledge and confirms that the pendant is indeed from the shadow layer. He explains that such forbidden things come from another world and require payment for use. Uncle adds that the cost of use depends on the strength of the wearer. If Charlie is above level 5, he can wear the pendant without worry. He concludes that the most amazing thing about the pendant is its ability to recognize people. Charlie, full of interest, puts the pendant around his neck. Uncle Lee walks around him and asks how he feels. Charlie replies that he hasn't noticed any changes. Uncle Lee notices that Charlie's willpower seems to be neutralizing the effects of the pendant, and says that everything is under control. After a while, Uncle Lee leaves, and Charlie falls asleep, having forgotten to remove the pendant. The pendant begins to shake and accumulate dark energy. After accumulating enough energy, the pendant creates a portal and pulls Charlie in. Waking up, Charlie doesn't realize where he is and looks around. Suddenly, his ears are pierced by the loud scream of the woman in the bubble, and Charlie decides to keep walking. As he walks further, Charlie sees images of the previous wearers of the pendant and their tragic fates. As Charlie studies the memories of the pendant, he realizes that all of its bearers ended badly. Suddenly, he hears a mysterious voice calling him Master, and darkness begins to gather before his eyes. The next day, Carol and Charlie are riding in the car. Carol yawns tiredly. Charlie asks if she slept well. She replies that she couldn't sleep all night because of the excitement. Carol wonders how Charlie spent the night. He replies that he slept fine and had wonderful dreams. Charlie suddenly realizes that he can't remember his dreams except for vague images of a shadow pendant. He puts his hand on Carol's shoulder and offers her a rest, assuring her that he won't do anything. Their argument is interrupted by Uncle Lou at the wheel, who tells Carol that there are a lot of bad people at the training camp, and she needs to be more careful. Carol promises her father that she will follow his instructions. Charlie wonders if Uncle Lou means him. Uncle Lou reminds to follow the instructor's instructions and to call him if necessary. Carol replies that he says it all the time. Charlie confidently tells his uncle not to worry, promising to always be there for Carol. His uncle mentally remarks that it is Charlie he is worried about. The car pulls up to its destination and the characters get out. Charlie takes Carol's hand, causing Uncle Lou to become angry and enraged. Carol pulls her hand away and asks what Charlie is doing, reminding her that Uncle Lou is still watching. Charlie cheerfully replies that it's okay, since they've always been together and there's nothing wrong with that. Carol smilingly asks him to stop. They approach the platform and hear a train approaching. The train passes the carriage, leaving for the Night's Watch training camp. The doors close behind the heroes, and the announcer announces that the carriage is moving non-stop and arriving in 20 minutes. Charlie admits to Carol that he didn't expect to see so many people, and assumes that they all came from different gathering places. Carol adds that everyone in the wagon has a high test score, indicating they have powerful willpower or extraordinary abilities. They need training to deal effectively with people of the first rank. Charlie is theatrically surprised and thinks that with his strength he can handle rank 2 monsters. Carol warns Charlie not to take the training lightly. It won't be easy. She advises him to wait until he arrives at the camp, when he will really feel the real suffering. Charlie proudly states that he won't have any problems. The train continues toward the camp, but it takes a long time to reach the terminus. Charlie wakes up to Carol tapping him on the shoulder and calling his name. Reluctantly opening his eyes, he asks what happened. The trip was supposed to take 20 minutes, but they've been on the road for 40 minutes and still haven't arrived. Charlie thinks this is strange and notices through the window that a thick fog surrounds them. The passengers who are awake also look out the window. One of them notices that the fog is unusual. The train suddenly stops and all the standing passengers fall to the floor of the car. The announcer informs them that they have arrived at the muster and warns them to open the doors. When the students look around and no one is there to meet them, Charlie decides to be the first to exit the carriage. Carol yells for Charlie to come back and runs out after him, afraid of losing him. Charlie takes a few steps and notices that the platform is covered in blood. Carol is a little startled, but Charlie decides to see if it's a joke. He leans over and runs his finger over a pool of red liquid. After examining his finger, he realizes that it is human blood. The other students begin to panic, asking how someone could have been killed here. Charlie assumes that others are involved and asks the students to tell the night watch and return as soon as possible. Carol asks where Charlie is going. He nonchalantly replies that he needs to use the restroom. Carol calls out to Charlie, trying to keep him close, but seeing that he can't hear her, decides to act on her own. Overcome with fear, Carol runs after Charlie, ready to help in case of danger. The students pull out their phones and discover there is no signal. They decide to follow Charlie and get out of the train car too to investigate the situation. Charlie exits the restroom, admitting that he feels better now. He is immersed in reflecting on his life and does not notice someone in the form of a dog attacking him from behind. However, turning around at the last moment, Charlie sees only a rock flying at the dog and turning it into a bloody mess. Turning around, Charlie notices Carol and asks why she is here. Carol yells at him, accusing him of not understanding the danger and asking what she would tell Uncle Lee if something happened to him. Charlie asks her to calm down and listen to his proposal. Carol agrees and says she is listening carefully. Charlie assumes that everything that is happening is part of the training. Carol asks when the training started. Charlie replies that it started as soon as they got off the wagon. Carol asks why Charlie thinks it was all planned and what evidence he has. Charlie points to the monster that just exploded and asks her to pay attention. Carol analyzes the monster and says that it is a low-rank creature, and such a weak opponent wouldn't have the courage to attack the camp. Charlie praises her intelligence, patting her on the shoulder. Carol snaps back, reminding her that they are in a difficult situation. Charlie explains that if someone had actually staged a raid, the Night's Watch would have known about it by now. In his opinion, the Night's Watch deliberately delayed their time in the wagon and used the thick fog to create an atmosphere of fear. He believes that under such pressure, the weak and the strong become more visible. Charlie declares that he is the strongest and he need not worry. As he talks, he doesn't notice a pack of dogs sneaking up on him. Charlie quickly hides behind Carol, theatrically asking her to use her powers. Carol reminding him that he has claimed his own powers. Charlie makes the excuse that if he decides to act, the dogs won't stand a chance, and that's not really fair. He pushes Carol forward, offering to show her his powers. The officers of the Night Watch watch his displays of heroism through video cameras. Carol instantly destroys the dogs using her otherworldly powers. Charlie runs up to her, shouting congratulations and trying to be supportive. Carol doesn't appreciate his generosity and attacks him with fists, accusing him of inaction. Charlie responds that this expresses his trust. Intercepting one of the punches, Charlie says this is not the time to fight and points to a map on the wall. Charlie walks over to the map and says that it can be used to find a way out, and offers to study it more closely. Carol wonders if they need to get out of this place to get training, and Charlie continues to examine the map and finds Sector C, called the Shadow Field. Carol explains that she thinks the shadow field mimics the shadow layer and suggests that it is the most dangerous place on the property. Charlie says that the most dangerous places are the safest and offers to go there, promising protection. Several students run out of the darkness, screaming for help. Ignoring Carol and Charlie, they run on. The heroes wonder what could have frightened the students. Suddenly, Carol points at Charlie and yells for him to be careful. Turning around, Charlie sees a huge, multi-headed snake. The snake attacks, but Charlie manages to jump back without getting a scratch. Charlie notes that this is a rank 1 creature, and if it enters the camp, the consequences will be lethal. Carol enters the fight, flanking the snake and activating her abilities. The snake detects Carol and attacks, opening its jaws with razor-sharp teeth. At the last moment, Charlie saves her by throwing the snake's head away with a powerful kick. Grabbing Carol's hand, he tells her to run, and they retreat as fast as they can. The snake rushes after them, and Charlie is eager to get Carol to safety. He chooses a hallway and rushes down it, But then he hears a door slam. Turning around, he realizes that Carol is gone and he is left behind closed doors, alone. Nightwatch wonders why the snake can't be suppressed with crystals. One of the officers says that control has been lost for unknown reasons. Another offers to go out and tackle the monster, but Commander Murphy decides to wait. The commander wants to observe Charlie's abilities and leave it at that. Charlie studies the door and notices that it is unusual. He sees that the glass is letting sunlight through and notices how the view outside the door is changing. Charlie decides to open the door, hoping to meet Carol again. But immediately he is attacked by the snake they had just escaped from. Charlie fails to dodge and the snake grabs him with its teeth. He tries to free himself by striking at the snake's eyes and teeth. Charlie throws the snake off with his punches and falls to the ground, thinking he has almost lost control. To his surprise, the shadow form activates on its own. He is trying to figure out what happened when something new lands next to him. Turning around, Charlie sees a humanoid monster with many eyes. The Watchers are stunned. They didn't expect a near second-ranked force to appear during their training. The monster extends its arm and sends waves of green energy at Charlie. Charlie dodges easily, but doesn't notice the trap the creature left behind. The waves of energy attack Charlie, causing unbearable pain in his head. While he is in agony, another monster decides to take advantage of the situation and rushes at him to deliver a fatal blow. However, Charlie suddenly stops pretending and grabs his attacker by the throat in midair. Laughing, he informs the creature that such tricks don't work on him. Having disposed of the enemy, he begins to absorb monsters with the Shadow Bite skill. After devouring the creature, he turns to the database to study his new foes. The bestiary says that the creature he encountered is called a snake, a low-level creature with multiple heads. He also checks the records of the faceless one and notices that this subspecies was a descendant of a lower-ranked shadow species. Charlie assumes that his stalker subspecies is hostile to the shadow species, which is why the others attacked him. He wonders why the instructor sent such powerful others for training. The worst part, he thinks, is that the instructor saw his form, which means there's no point in hiding. Charlie tries to remove the form, ordering it away with various gestures and commands, but to no avail. Suddenly he hears a guttural growl and sees a huge creature with dozens of eyes following him. Charlie activates the shadow claws, realizing that hiding from view is now difficult. The night watchmen lose contact with the cameras and begin to panic, trying to figure out the cause. Soon, technical department specialists rush in and report that the entire information system is down. It is also reported that communication with the two instructors has been lost and everyone in the room falls into a daze. An old man with a cane appears and says that he didn't expect such a mess in the training camp. He looks sternly at those present and asks if they consider themselves worthy mentors. Murphy addresses the old man as Chief Miller and asks what to do next. The old man orders to honor all who have entered the shadow field, remove the fog, stop the evaluation, and send people to maintain order. When everyone gets to their tasks, he asks Instructor Murphy to stay. The old man tells Murphy that he is the calmest of all and asks about the camp's shadow field. He adds that as soon as the students entered the shadow field, there was an anomaly visible even to the naked eye. Murphy honestly answers that the camp's shadow field is related to a forbidden place where a person who had contact with others began to sprout eyeballs until they covered their entire body. Murphy informs him that there is a powerful other living in the area that usually only brings in inferior species no higher than rank 1. But this time, something went wrong. Miller asks what rank this otherkin is, and Murphy replies that it has been viable for half a month. Miller lowers his eyes and says that only a 4th-ranked man can match him in strength. Murphy assures him that with initiative, everything should go fine, and adds that even if a person below rank 3 enters the shadow field, nothing terrible will happen. Murphy adds that if a person of rank 4 enters the zone, complete chaos will ensue and the others will evolve and mutate. The old man asks if Murphy knows about 4th-ranked freshmen, to which Murphy replies that the likelihood of that happening is small, but not zero. Murphy adds that regardless of rank, something affected them, and it's probably the end for Charlie. Charlie encounters another low-rank monster and fights his way through it. He continues to run away, taunting the others and shouting that they can never catch up to him. But behind his bravado, he doesn't notice some others firing sound waves at him and misses an attack in the back. After recovering from the attack, Charlie is surprised that monsters can use such abilities. Looking around, he notices that some others of the 2nd rank have appeared here. Charlie decides to fight them, claiming that he will show them his 2nd-ranked power. His attempts to activate his shadow blades fail, however, and he looks at his hands in confusion. Focusing on his internal energy, he realizes that his abilities are partially sealed. Looking up, he notices that the others are not attacking, but conversing in an incomprehensible language. Charlie wonders why the monsters aren't attacking, and assumes that they are afraid of his power. After a moment, the monsters part, and a huge monster with 2 curved swords comes out to Charlie. Charlie realizes with horror that another rank 3 monster is in front of him. Realizing that there is nowhere to run, Charlie takes up the fight and prepares to fight. The monster strikes, and Charlie decides to block it by crossing his claws. However, the clash of otherworldly weapons and shadow claws causes an explosion, throwing Charlie back against the wall. Shaking it off, Charlie realizes that he can't go on like this. It could end badly. Charlie realizes that even rank 2 is a threat in his current state, let alone rank 3. After assessing the odds, he decides to confuse his opponent with shadow threads to slow him down. Using the time he has gained, Charlie quickly retreats. But the threads don't hold him for long, and the monster easily tears them. After a few seconds, the monster begins to chase Charlie, and Charlie notices its incredible speed. When the monster catches up with Charlie, he miraculously manages to dodge a sword strike. The sword gets stuck in the pavement, and Charlie decides to take advantage of this by striking the monster. Charlie notices that his attacks are taking a toll on the monster and decides to build up enough energy for a decisive strike. However, the monster recovers quickly and throws Charlie back with a powerful punch to the face. The force of the blow throws Charlie into the stone building again, punching a hole in it. Looking up, he sees that the otherworldly monster does not stop its pursuit. But once the monster comes within a certain distance, it suddenly stops, surprising Charlie. Charlie watches the monster and tries to figure out what happened and why the enemy stopped moving. After looking around, he realizes that he is in a training camp. Although he doesn't realize what's going on, it seems to him that the place strongly resembles a shadow lair. Charlie realizes that this place scares him even more than the shadow lair. Suddenly, the shadow monster interrupts the inactivity and lunges at Charlie. Charlie dodges the powerful blow and decides he needs to run to save his life. He uses all his strength to keep going and keep running. A dark haze begins to cover the alley in front of him, and he begins to think that his vision is failing. Suddenly, Charlie feels himself stop touching the ground and realizes he is in an energy shell. He tries to figure out what this place is, feeling someone taking control of his body and pulling him somewhere. Charlie tries to regain control and mentally commands whoever is controlling him that only he himself is the master of his body. After a while, control of his body is regained, but Charlie notices a dark sphere approaching. The sphere penetrates his body, enveloping him in dark energy. Suddenly, a voice sounds in Charlie's head, calling him Shadow Lord and promising that he is welcome. A few seconds later, Charlie finds himself inside a prism drifting through space. Charlie asks aloud where he is, and the creature in the prism replies that they are on the border of two worlds. As Charlie looks around for his companion, he hears a suggestion to go deeper into the shadows. The entity informs Charlie that they are derivatives of the same thing and are almost indistinguishable. Charlie calmly strikes the wall of the prism, startling the entity. She asks what he is doing, to which Charlie replies that he is simply removing a nuisance. The entity warns that Charlie is in a hurry and risks losing his skills as a master of the deep. Charlie replies that he doesn't have time as he must hurry to save Carol, but the entity suggests that he see for himself. Looking up, Charlie notices a huge eye watching him. Charlie asks the entity if it has indeed blocked some of his abilities. The entity confirms this, explaining that the glittering eye and the shadowy appearance are enemies. Charlie, she says, is descended from the shadow appearance, despite its uniqueness. Charlie assumes that the prism entity saved him and wonders why. The entity replies that she has been waiting for him for a very long time. She explains that she has been waiting for a person of the same power as herself. The entity adds that she was previously a high-ranking being. The entity continues that she had power and responsibility and was the commander of the group. But due to an accident, her body disintegrated into fragments and fell into this world, where a sparkling species took her remains and soul. The entity tells that the other, who turned out to be capricious, turned his back on her and used her powers to increase his power. Now the entity comes out of her prison and says that she has been waiting for someone of the shadow kind, asking Charlie to help her put an end to it. She promises Charlie that he can become her master later, and she will obey him. Charlie, unimpressed by the entity's speeches, simply slaps her. The entity becomes enraged and demands an explanation, stating that it agreed to help fight the appearance of the eyes. Charlie replies that the entity, left without its last pair of pants, has no right to put conditions on him. He also asks if the entity will really obey him. The entity replies that it doesn't matter, since Charlie won't be able to escape from here anyway. The angry prism creature argues that Charlie will become its master and that should be a great honor for him. After listening to the pathetic speeches, Charlie grabs the creature by the throat and launches his shadow tentacles at it. He says that from the entity's own accounts it used to be strong, but now it looks weak. The entity replies that it has a 6th rank shadow species, and that Charlie will not be able to survive. Charlie begins to absorb the creature with shadow tentacles, and the entity can't believe that a mere 2nd-ranked human could overpower it. Charlie completes the absorption of the enemy, fully regaining his strength. An otherworldly eye appears on his chest, returning his energy. The Night Watch instructors shadow the students, asking them to take the contamination cure and not to leave the formation. Carol, surrounded by the instructors, mentally hopes Charlie is okay. Meanwhile, a group of others sneak up behind her and attack, trying to take her by surprise. Carol notices the enemy and uses her powers to stop them. One of the night patrol officers notices this and kills the dazed monsters. The patrolmen thank Carol, saying that the fight would have been harder without her help. One of the gunmen says that everyone needs to get ready to leave. Turning around, he fails to react in time to the monster's attack and is hit in the face. Unconscious from the blow, the fighter falls silently in front of Carol. Carol notices that the eyed man is trying to sneak up on her to kill her. At the last moment, Murphy comes to the rescue and kills the monster. Murphy thinks to himself that the others are third-rank creatures and that the situation is worse than expected. He reprimands the combatants for their carelessness, noting that they were almost attacked stealthily despite orders to be alert. Looking back at the group of survivors, Murphy reflects that they are being attacked by creatures of the third rank and assumes that there is a special fourth rank among them. He waves to his students, urging them to follow him, but Carol stops him. She informs him that she was with Charlie, but now he is missing. Murphy guesses that Charlie may be eye-rolling and suggests that Carol may be close to him. Suddenly, a huge third-rank warrior with a sword appears behind Murphy. Murphy disarms him with a slight movement and throws him away. After covering Carol with his body, Murphy realizes that she too is in danger as another has come for her. He orders the fighters to escort the students and rushes in to attack the monsters. Thrown back by the captain, the monster gets up and attacks again. Murphy uses the wind eye technique, lifting the monster into the air. However, a few seconds later, another monster flies out of the tornado, again sheathing his sword. Murphy tries to stop it, but falls under the hypnotic gaze of another eye. Murphy's abilities disappear, and he is confused trying to figure out what happened. Turning around, he sees the silhouette of a huge, otherworldly monster. The monster uses an all-consuming hypnotic gaze, and all the fighters in the area fall under its influence. Murphy loses consciousness and falls helplessly to the pavement. Carol, trying to concentrate, realizes that her body is not listening and her consciousness begins to fade. The girl admits to herself that despite being morally prepared, she feels powerless in front of others. Realizing that this is her last moment, she hopes that Charlie is saved and will live. At that moment, Charlie appears, intercepting a piece of rebar thrown by the monster. Carefully placing the unconscious Carol on the ground, Charlie assesses the number of opponents. Picking himself up, he turns to the monsters and decides to put his skills to use. He reminds the monsters that the shadow species dominates here and rushes to attack. Raising his hand, he causes a swirl of shadows to surround the monsters. Charlie meets his enemies with cold confidence, saying that they are in his territory. Moments later, the enemies' heads explode one after another from the swift blows. Charlie walks past, destroying the bodies of his enemies with the power of his mind. He is met by a mangled comrade of the third rank, and Charlie says they have met again. Ignoring the seals, Charlie summons the shadow swords and says it's his turn to attack. Without giving the enemy a moment's hesitation, Charlie makes a lightning-fast dash, piercing him. A second later, the enemy's body explodes, blowing to pieces behind Charlie. The last living enemy remains the main alien eye, preparing to attack Charlie with powerful spells. But Charlie is quicker to pierce his eye with his shadow sword. With the chase skill activated, he decapitates the enemy. Charlie stands in the bloody rain of the enemy's body, marveling at the power of shadows. Once the enemy's vision is gone, his spells no longer work, and Charlie decides to devour the remaining enemies. Charlie notes that even at rank 2, he was able to destroy another rank 3 in a matter of seconds, realizing why the vision works in groups. He absorbs the body of a powerful opponent, thanking him for the vivid emotion. A group of Night Watch fighters appear, reporting the interruption of the previous group's signal. Charlie spots them and notices that they have arrived a little out of time. The squad commander orders all the wounded to be removed as quickly as possible. The squad medic demands medication for the contamination or people could die. The commander says they need a few men to cover their eyes. Soon all the injured are evacuated to the hospital. Charlie decides to waste no time and brags about his outstanding adventures. His fascinating tale is interrupted by Carol hitting him on the cheek with pills. She is not pleased and asks how he can brag after such injuries. Charlie again asks Carol to treat his wounds. Carol eagerly agrees and opens a jar of medicine. Carol pours the medicine on Charlie's wound and it begins to burn his arm badly. Charlie jumps up from his chair, yelling across the hall. He says the medicine needs to be taken and asks if she wants him dead. Charlie wonders if she resents him, and Carol replies that he just disappeared, making her look back and worry. Charlie understands Carol's feelings and apologizes, explaining that he was transported by otherworldly forces. Carol gently touches his cheeks and tells him that he doesn't need to apologize. She asks him never to do that again and looks at him worriedly. Charlie promises not to scare her, to which Carol adds that she noticed something strange. She passed out from the attack but woke up unharmed. Charlie says there's nothing strange about that, but Carol assures her that it was Brother Ye who saved her. Charlie doubts that Brother Ye could have gotten into the training camp, suggesting that Carol is imagining things. Carol firmly asserts that it was exactly Yo's brother. She adds that she feels like she's known him for a long time. Charlie asks if she doubts him. Carol says that Brother Yo isn't as underhanded as Charlie, to which he snorts back resentfully. Charlie asks if Brother Ye can study with them, and he replies that it's unlikely. With a keen sense of justice and stunning good looks, so he can't be an ordinary student. Carol agrees, but asks how he knows Ye's brother is handsome. Charlie asks her to stay on point. Suddenly, Instructor Murphy walks up to Charlie and calls out to him. Carol and Charlie wonder how he is feeling. Murphy replies that he will recover quickly. Carol thanks him and the other instructors for the lack of casualties. Murphy says that everything happened because of their negligence, and they had a duty to handle the situation. He notices that he didn't see Charlie among the rescued students and asks if he got out alone. Charlie confidently replies that he made it on his own. Murphy praises Charlie, saying he looks forward to his next performance. He pulls out a special sensor and decides to check Charlie and Carol for infection here, since there are too many people in the treatment room. After quickly checking them, Murphy informs them that there is no infection and advises them to take their medication and return to their rooms. Saying goodbye, Murphy says he will go check on the others and leaves. As he steps back, he discovers that Charlie is a second-rate man. Murphy thinks this explains how Charlie was able to get out on his own, but still doesn't understand how he managed to resist the look in his eyes. Murphy is surprised that Charlie's contamination index is 0, since usually after murders, the contamination level rises. Charlie asks Carol whose name she said before Brother Ye arrived. She replies that it was her father's name. Murphy reflects on the test, realizing that Charlie is hiding many secrets. Charlie arrives at Yunhai University, where the setting is educational, and notices the girls walking by. Impressed by their stockings, he again arouses the jealousy of his lover Carol. Calling Charlie an idiot, Carol turns and leaves with a frustrated look. She says she's going to the dormitory, and Charlie offers to drive her since she doesn't know the area well. Carol asks if this is an excuse to look at other girls. Charlie replies sincerely that she has exposed him. Thanking him for his honesty with another blow to the head, Carol leaves, asking him not to speak to her again. Fred approaches Charlie and asks why he pissed Carol off again. Fred takes a look at Charlie and notices that he hasn't changed at all. Charlie wonders when Fred became so fat. Fred replies that his ability is gluttony, giving him strength. He adds that initially his ability was not suitable for university entrance, but after lowering the bar, he was able to pass the selection process. Fred offers to take Charlie to his room and asks where he is going. Charlie replies that he is going to the first building. After a while, they approach the first dorm building. Charlie notices that it looks like a hotel. Fred explains that it is a dormitory for the top students at the training camp, and the facilities are top-notch. He adds that in addition to the dormitory, there is a small garden, a gym, and a library. They arrive at room 101, and Fred says it's Charlie's room, but notices that it's unlocked. As they enter, they see that the upperclassmen are in charge of Charlie's room. One of the students stands up and states that Charlie is in the wrong building. With a satisfied look, he says that the room belongs to him now. Fred objects that this is complete nonsense and that there are no such rules at the university. The senior asks Fred if he has any complaints. Fred replies confidently that this is a freshman dorm and they need to move out. The upperclassman bursts into the room and yells that the freshmen are breaking dorm rules. The upperclassmen run over to the commotion, promising to help the freshmen sort things out. Charlie puts his hand on Fred's shoulder, calming him down. He says their opponents are seniors and won't be able to ruin a first impression. Charlie adds that the seniors are taking on too much. The bullies don't tolerate such words and attack Charlie, urging him to pray. Charlie prepares for battle by clenching his fist and awakening his strength. But the high school student behind him lights up, forcing everyone to retreat. Turning around, Charlie sees that the high schooler has the powers of a student. The bully asks Charlie what his name is, and Charlie calmly answers. Bully says that Charlie shouldn't have gotten in trouble today and offers to fight for that room in the arena. Charlie agrees, adding that one fight won't be enough. He points to the other students, saying that they'll have to fight him too. Rumors of the upcoming battle spread quickly, and the students are all but discussing it. Everyone gathers at the stadium and takes their seats. A member of the Night's Watch finishes registering the participants and informs them that they can now choose their weapons and equipment. A bully comes forward and his team cheers him on, arrogantly stating that they can only sympathize with the newcomer. Fred tells Charlie that it's not too late to leave, but Charlie confidently replies that he knows what he's doing. He walks over to the weapons rack and starts going through the blades, looking for one that will suit him. While Charlie chooses a weapon, his opponent gets into position, choosing a spear. Holding the weapon out in front of him, the bully calls Charlie over and asks him to stop procrastinating. Charlie replies that he just needs time to choose a better weapon. The bully notices that Charlie hasn't even chosen a defense, and argues that bragging won't help. Infuriated, the bully lunges at Charlie, yelling that he'll crush him in a second. Charlie notes that his opponent also possesses a shadow, and says it's getting curiouser and curiouser. The crowd roars, chanting Tough Nut's name and demanding that he teach the arrogant Charlie a lesson. Tough Nut dives into the shadows and appears behind Charlie to launch a surprise attack. At the moment of impact, the shadow flashes and both contestants disappear from the sight of the excited crowd. When the smoke clears, everyone sees Tough Nut defeated, and Charlie standing over him, expressing disappointment in his opponent.